Welcome everybody to a brand new episode of the Jams and Tea podcast, where we spin the jams and spill the tea. And this week we have a new episode for you, covering two new records coming out. We are going to be talking about the long-awaited new album from one of my favorite bands. We're going to be talking about Ghost's Impera. I have talked about this band since before this podcast even fucking started, so I can't believe it's technically taken me this long. If you want to know what I think of their other records, I have just the video for you. I have worst to best that I made on Halloween of last year. Catch up with all of my thoughts on all of those other records, and then come right back here so we can talk about that. And also on the bill today, we have a new album that is broadly, I would consider, an indie rock album from Nilüfer Yanya Painless. And yeah, we're going to be talking about that. This week's record club is going to be a big one because it is from Connor, who is joining us once again today. We are going to be talking about the album from Johnny Foreigner. And what is the album called again?
Waited Up Till It Was Light.
That's the one.
For our listeners at home, we've actually already recorded that, and I can say
yes,
it goes hard. And
I'm probably going to listen to that tonight. I wasn't a part of the recording, but this has been a band that I've needed to listen to because Connor has been in my sphere for the longest of times. And
Central
just a side note,
it's my face.
Connor is here, but also we have a brand new guest this week, longtime friend of the podcast. We have Brett joining us this week. Woohoo!
This is
Hey,
like,
everyone.
I was just saying to Brett
Everybody.
before, this is like such a long time coming, because Brett, for those of you who don't know, has been one of our most ardent supporters, has been one of our most frequent commenters,
Hell yeah.
has boosted the podcast in a lot of ways, and is also someone that we consider a friend now as well. Like, we're not just having Brett on because he's such a supporter of the podcast, that he's actually a super cool dude, and we're really excited to like give him the full like main episode of Jams and Tea experience. Having like guests on just about every week this year, I think, has really like made the podcast develop and continue to grow and stay fresh. So yeah, I'm really excited for this episode. I think it's going to be a great one. And yeah, anything else we need to shout out before we get into it?
This week we just put up a couple of videos. We started big news. We started our new retrospective. Last year we did the Radiohead retrospective. This year we're doing the Björk retrospective.
Yes.
Riley and I talked about her debut. A good little episode for a good little album. And we also put up another discussion that involved Connor, a great little discussion with Morgan and Riley talking about a very podcast core band, Coheed and Cambria's Second Stage Turbine Blade, which turned 20. And that's an album with a whole lot of shit in it. And ooh, that Vespertine vinyl.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Brett, are you team Vespertine officially? Because I am too.
So I've only listened to Bjork stuff up to Vespertine, and I just kind of stopped there because it's like, well, I don't need to listen to anything else. This is just perfect. Like, this is just
Well, in
Yes.
fact, my dude, you may in fact have to listen to everything else, because there's
I know, I
fucking
need to.
bangers post.
I'm technically team Vespertine. Well, it's not my favorite of hers, but it's still a perfect album. So like,
Yeah.
I have fluctuated from being team Vespertine and team Homogenic. I'm currently team Homogenic. That record has a lot of like childhood nostalgia for me, very much influenced my tastes in a lot of ways. But Vespertine is like, I mean, it's one of the most beautiful records ever recorded. And if you want to hear what we think of it, then make sure you're subbed to the channel, because new Björk retrospective episodes will be dropping every other Thursday on this channel until we do the whole discography and get it done. And it's going to be really, really fucking good. We'll be bringing on guests for specific albums as well. It won't just be me and Jake the whole way through. And we're really excited to have another artist retrospective series done on this channel. I'm so super proud of the Radiohead one, and I'm super excited to get
this
into
series
the
is
real
definitely going to
classics.
make me finish her discography if I don't do it by myself.
Oh yeah,
I'm definitely missing out on like Volnakira. Like, I hear Medulla is great
Oh,
too.
yeah.
So I'm
Yeah.
definitely in for something.
Yeah, but as per usual, before we get into our main reviews, let's talk about what we have been listening to in the last 7 days. Jake, what have you been listening to?
well, since we did our EP episode last week, which if you haven't seen that, go check that out. Talked about some of our favorite EPs. We didn't do a what we've been listening to segment, so I have plenty of stuff to talk about. But the first thing I actually want to mention is I want to issue a recommendation to anyone who, well, likes this podcast to the rest of my podcast mates, assuming you don't already listen to them, just because I guess we technically now exist within the music YouTube content creator sphere, which is a weird thing to think about. I have now encountered someone whose content has really, like, I've just been rapidly consuming. YouTuber slash Twitter user FD Signifier. If you don't know anything about this guy, he's a really like awesome grassroots dude who does lots of videos about like hip hop and Black culture. And the videos that I got into with him are about, he basically frames the rise and fall of people like Drake or Kanye West as like a wrestling narrative. And it's so fascinating to listen to these artists who, like, you know, I didn't really experience many album rollouts of Kanye's in real time. So getting to see what someone who was there at like ground zero of when The College Dropout came out sort of do this kind of retrospective and talk about why he was so like such a beloved figure back then was a really fascinating deep dive that made me appreciate a lot of things about it. And even Drake too is somebody who, like, you know, he's so omnipresent in the industry, you just kind of forget the fact that he wasn't always the person that he was. And he's got great videos about like everything too. So go check him out if you want someone who's like really our brand of like really developed discussions on things, just because dude is a chill, awesome guy. In terms of actual music, I finally slayed the dragon. The Black Sabbath discography is finished. It's dead, and I beat it.
You lived, bitch.
I went through a lot of very unremarkable, bad, lukewarm albums, and at the very end, I got the sort of very strange 1-2 punch of Forbidden and 13. I am also going to be talking about Heaven and Hell's The Devil You Know, because that's also Black Sabbath. It was released in 2009, and Dio came back as the frontman right before he died, I think. But that said, Forbidden and 13, it's maybe the most stark difference in quality that this band have back to back, just because Forbidden, which is most often considered the worst Black Sabbath album, which is a take I would not fight a single soul on, frankly. I don't agree, just because I do have a much stronger disdain for Born Again. And Forbidden isn't as aggressively badly produced and like downright just like viscerally unpleasant to listen to as that album. But never before has an album so like effortlessly suffered the death of 1,000 cuts. In any possible way Forbidden can suck enough to make you hate it, it does. Even the production, which is like fine, just becomes so dry and bland and lifeless. Even things that you think would be this car crash catastrophe, like the Ice-T feature, is like, it's boring. It's not even funny. You're just kind of sitting there like, wait, that was it? That's what people talk about? I couldn't even tell that was fucking him. This is lame, man. And that's the whole album, is that it's just lame. It's these structurally repetitive. That's probably why it's considered one of the worst, is that it's like you have people like Tony Iommi, Geezer Butler, and fucking just some of the best people to play their respective instruments, and they are sleepwalking through this entire album. It is so boring. It could be used as a fucking sleep aid. And then after that, though, I got to listen to 13, which I listened to immediately afterwards, which is an album that's the reunion album. That was like the most recent one. It was the last one. It should be
mentioned that there's like an 18-year gap between Forbidden and 13.
And Ozzy came back. It was the first Sabbath album he's been on since fucking Technical Ecstasy, I think. And so, you know, long time coming. And like, look, this is not going to be anybody's favorite Black Sabbath album, and I get that I listen to a lot of pretty middling to shit albums. Oh, 13 is so good though. Oh man, it's just the novelty of being able to hear an Ozzy Black Sabbath album with modern metal production is just outstanding. It felt like a genuine treat to get to. And honestly, there's not like a weak spot on the album. It doesn't reach the heights of anything classic Sabbath has made by any stretch of the imagination, but it's a insanely consistent record that, to my shock, if I had to pick what I think is the best song the band ever made, the closer on this album, Dear Father, is the best Black Sabbath song.
Wow.
This is a song
okay.
that is like
Interesting.
a lot of Black Sabbath's sort of best, most thematically interesting material is very existential. Ozzy's always been a writer that's kind of gone in between being like cheesier like metal stuff and then like purely existential stuff and very like rock blues kind of heartbreak romantic kind of stuff. It's all over the place, but this is a song that is purely aimed at the hypocrisy of the Catholic Church. And it's basically written from the point of view of a boy who is sexually molested by a priest. And it is so fucking angry. Like the first half of it is doomy and serrating, and the lyricism is just fucking gutting. And then the second half, there's a tempo change in the middle, and then the fucking rest of the song is just this galloping onslaught of catharsis, and it's fucking awesome.
Wow.
It's so great. So anybody who's ever put off that album, don't. I legitimately think that deserves to be in the conversation of albums that, like, you know, it's certainly underrated in my opinion.
I'm just processing the fact that there could possibly be a Black Sabbath song that's better than fucking War Pigs or Paranoid or Iron Man or Children of the Grave or Into the Void. Like, holy shit.
Or every song on Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath, but you know. But yeah, that was super duper awesome. Very, very glad that I kind of buried that dragon. Expect something on the horizon, because Lord knows I'm not doing that without making a video about it in some respect. One album I've listened to that like more like personal listening stuff is something that Morgan mentioned a couple of weeks ago, which is Tricky's Maxinquaye. Oh my God. I love capital L. Love this album. I've been listening to it almost nonstop since I've heard it. I genuinely think this might be my favorite trip hop album. Like, I think I prefer it, albeit narrowly, to something like Portishead's Dummy. But oh my God, I am just in love with the way this thing sounds. Fucking, and like, it's some of the most adventurous trip hop out there, because it does have that kind of chill, melancholic vibe that something like Dummy has. But then it also has shit like Black Steel on it.
I mean, there's
so
like,
good.
there's
It sounds like
definitely
a perfect album that I need to listen to.
I mean, like the thing is like it is one of the foundational trip hop records. Like it is a classic, and yet I think because Tricky's career since has been so spotty, it's kind of gotten a little bit overlooked in the modern day, somewhat anyway. Like it's still regarded as a classic, but songs like Overcome and Aftermath and fucking Ponderosa and Black Steel, Hell Is Around the Corner, You Don't, Suffocated Love, like all great trip hop songs, like just classic pieces of sort of UK hip hop and dub and techno and shit. Like it's just a really fantastic front to back record, and you can see why it's a classic straight away. It should be in the conversation with like Introducing and shit. Like it's just right up there, I think, and super important and influential as well.
Because last week we were talking about the EP from Seosin, I did a little bit of a binge of like hardcore and like post-hardcore music, a lot of Connor and Morgan core. I did a listen to stuff like Thursday's Full Collapse, which I liked very much. I listened to Jasmine's Lullaby by Seven Angels, Seven Plagues, which kicked fucking ass. And I listened to an album that I think would become Connor and Morgan core if it was heard. It's a post-hardcore, and I use post-hardcore in like the broadest of sense, because I don't even really know how to convey what kind of genre this is, just because it's so eclectic. But it is from the band The God Machine, and they have two albums I listened to, one of which is called, both of them are great, but the one I'll shout out is called One Last Laugh. It fucking, actually, that's not the whole title. It's One Last Laugh in Place of Dying. My bad. But this is some of the most out there, genre bending, just intensely fun to listen to post-hardcore I've ever heard. It's also like, it kind of switches up. Sometimes it can be like pulse pounding and shit, and other times it's like straight up doomy. It's just some of the most like holistic I've heard this genre at. And from what I can tell, both of these albums are in like pretty highly regarded by most people. So, I mean, by all means, give a listen to either one of them, just because I've been sort of haphazardly listening to songs from the both of them this week and just found myself really fucking digging them.
This seems like a really interesting band. Like they only have 2 records, but they're both bolded, and it seems like they broke up because their bassist died of a brain tumor after they finished recording their second album. So
I
it's
did not
like
know that.
It's an example, I guess, of a band that like could have had an even longer and more illustrious career, but you just have these 2 albums that people seem to love. So I have heard of this band before, and I was sort of familiar with these albums existing, but I'd never really thought about them consciously. So I'm going to actually definitely listen to these this week, because they seem, you're right, they seem totally up our alley. Like, holy shit.
100%.
They're from like kind of near where I live. They're from San Diego.
Oh shit. Damn.
Oh, yeah, they're like an hour from where I live. That's crazy.
Fuck yeah.
It turns out I have their debut saved like in my to listen to list, and I didn't realize that. But yeah, this like from the genre tags with it shows like alt rock, alt metal, post metal, space rock, post hardcore. It almost seems like it would be like sort of like Cave In, at least Cave In's later stuff. So I'm definitely interested.
I would classify them as like, imagine Thrice, but if Thrice was doing every possible sound that Thrice has ever tried to do at the same time.
And 90, 93, 94. Wow. Okay,
that's already like telling me that this is a kind of foundational band.
It's good shit.
Yeah,
love it.
I gotta check this out.
And because I guess one of the records we're reviewing this week is, heavy metal, I've been on a bit of a metal kick. I have to shout out, I'll go through a bunch of them just because there's nothing here that I'm like super focused on, but the newest album from metal stalwarts Immolation is fan-fucking-tastic. It's one of my favorite albums I've heard this year, Acts of God. This is basically like I know we throw this complaint at so many different albums and that like, yeah, this album's a little too long, but to cast that aside, this is just like, hey, do you want to listen to some bad ass death metal? Here you go. There's nothing here that like, this doesn't reinvent the genre wheel or anything, but if you're just like really in the mood for something like that, as well executed as anything that, came out of like the metal heyday from the 90s, is like, this is exactly the kind of shit that you want. Pure meat and potato shit. Absolutely wonderful stuff. I also listened to a August core band, Sepultura's Chaos AD, which is a fantastic kind of thrash metal crossover death metal album. This is a really eclectic band that don't really feel like they belong in any specific genre other than heavy metal that just kind of whips. Loved that a lot. It was really, really good. I wanted to shout out an album called The Key by Nocturnus, which is notable for its absolutely fucking wicked album cover.
This already sounds like a very Jake Core metal band. Just Nocturnus is just like, I immediately...
It's death metal, thrash metal like combo that's not unlike stuff like Morbid Angel,
right?
And it's like a science fiction twist on it. It's like Terminal Redux, or Black World, stuff like that. And this again, front to back, total ass kicker of an album. One of the most consistent metal albums I think I've heard in some time. A classic for a reason. In all respects, 100% recommend this to basically anybody I know. And so, yeah, lots of really good metal shit. The last thing I will mention here is that I listened to my second album from Aphex Twin, because I listened to selected ambient works back when I first got really into shit like, Autechre and what have you. And I was just like, oh, okay. And then never listened to another Aphex Twin album, even though I loved selected ambient works, and was like, yeah, this is good. It just didn't really like compel me in the way other stuff did. And it's easy to see why I didn't immediately go to Selected Ambient Works Volume 2, which is what I listened to, because it's fucking 2 hours long and it has a bajillion tracks. But I loved it. Oh man, this is just, sometimes people just be making really long albums and I just be sitting there like, wow, this are you gonna miss? Are you gonna miss eventually? And then they don't. Distinctly more dark ambient shit. I think I really got onto it when August mentioned that he was listening to one of them and was like, hey, this is a song here, which I believe is like, I think it's song number 4 on that album that was just like, this was highly influential on Glacier Flower. And that whole album, I was just like, yo, easy to see why this inspired them, just because it feels like the connective tissue between like Glacier Flower 20 and 21. And yeah, it's a long album, but it's perfect dark atmospheric shit. It's definitely a big tonal contrast to Selected Ambient Works, which I listen to that again too and still really like it, but this feels like it has a little bit more personality, I guess, than that record. And I just enjoy the more ambitious, sort of all-consuming weird darkness. It kind of sounds a lot like Boards of Canada's GeoGaddy. I would compare that to it as well, albeit not quite as good, but I still really, really, really enjoyed it.
Selected Ambient Works Volume 2 is not like probably maybe my least favorite Richard album, but it's still a record that has been in my life for a long time, and I have distinct memories associated with it. And also a record that when it hits its best material is basically unparalleled. And I have this distinct memory of being like, I don't know, I must have been really, really young, like really young. And I had this album on cassette. Like my dad gave me this album on cassette tape. And I remember having
ideal way to listen to Aphex Twin.
I remember having like a little portable cassette player, and I would just listen to this album, and I just have a very distinct, vivid memory of being very young and listening to the first song on this album, which is they're all untitled, but they have like unofficial titles that are based on the artwork that each track has within the CD gatefold thing. And the first track's alternate title is Cliffs. And I just remember listening to this, and it's just this very kind of empty sounding ambient song that has these kind of chopped up vocal samples that are kind of just like cascading. And I just have this very distinct memory of like being profoundly affected by that as a very young child. And I think that's left a really strong impression in my head and paved the way for a lot of the things that I like in sort of spacious, sort of empty music like that. And of course, you have songs like track 3, Rhubarb, which is like one of the most beloved and beautiful pieces of ambient music ever. And I'm also particularly fond of the song that it's not on every version of the album, but it's called Stone in Focus, and it's this gorgeous piece of like 10 minutes still ambient pad stuff that I absolutely adore. I think that the record is at some points a bit tedious for me, but when it hits, it's really, really something special. Yes. I will shout out some things that I have been listening to. Let me just get up my recents page. The first thing I want to shout out, maybe the most obscure thing that I'll shout out, is a new record from a jazz duo called Binker and Moses, made up of saxophonist Binker Golding and drummer Moses Boyd. And so it is a duo record of saxophone and drums, and it's called Feeding the Machine. It also features electronic contributions from Max Luther as well, which are reasonably subtle, but do add a distinct atmosphere to the project. But as a sort of saxophone drum duo, these guys are super fucking locked into each other. It's not like it's particularly intense or anything, although it has moments where it approaches that. It's very free jazz in the playing, but it also has a kind of spiritual jazz feeling that evokes like late Coltrane to me at certain points as well. It's very, very... it's a very great record. Like, it's a very easy record to put on and listen to front to back. And I've been trying to like find what are the interesting and good sort of jazz records like at the moment in 2022. And this has been an absolute standout for me. It's just on the edge of my top 10 of the year so far. So I highly, highly recommend that. Another record I want to shout out, I think, Brett, you were the person who made me aware of this, a new record from the doom metal band Mesa. Called Close.
Yeah, I listened to this.
This was a good album.
This was a really, really great doom metal record. Like, it just has a lot of immediacy to it. Really sharp, clean production, great riffs, great melodies, really great examples of like. Oh yeah.
Oh my God, she's
fantastic vocalists. And the lengthier tracks reminded me of like post metal. In terms of like song structure and kind of the way in which you get this kind of like lumbering sort of spacey sense to it. But even though it's a doom metal record, it also has a lot of kind of like really sharp riffage too. Like, it's just a great balance of heavier sort of more intense styles of music and also kind of doomy, sludgy stoner rock shit too.
Your favorite Chelsea Wolfe album is His Spun.
Chelsea Wolfe is a great comp. Like, she kept coming into my head when I was listening to this as a reference point. Like the singer and just the band in general, I think take a lot from some of Chelsea's more recent records. So absolutely gets my recommendation. I want to shout out a really great Southern hip hop / jazz rap record from an artist called Fly Anakin that came out last week that I want to check out. So this is Fly Anakin has had a reasonably prolific several years, although it looks like a lot of his releases have gone under the radar until 2020 when he collaborated with Pink Sifu on the album Fly Sifus, which was a really good record that I kind of dipped in and out of and seemed to have a lot of talent and color and flavor to it. Frank, which is the name of the new record, feels like it might be a breakthrough for this artist. It's really colorful, really fun. Southern hip hop. It has a kind of real nice sort of flavor to it, like sort of blood orange by way of De La Soul sort of thing. And it has like a lot of just short fragmented tracks that nonetheless kind of flow together into a really sort of impactful experience. There are moments like Poisonous Primates where and Ghost, the song Ghost, which have like a more sort of intense delivery and feel to them that I really, really fucking love. Great features from artists that I'm still kind of getting into, underground hip hop artists as well. So I highly recommend that. That is also like on the fringe, just under my top 10 of the year so far. A really, really strong release. Gets a highlight for me, the best hip hop record I've heard recently. Although I'm not short on contenders for that title as well, because I also checked out the new Benny the Butcher album, Tana Talk 4, which is very, very good too. I really enjoyed this. It has a great song with J. Cole called Johnny P's Caddy, which is the best song I've heard J. Cole on in some time. He's genuinely has some really great presence and ferocity on this track. There's collabs with Stove God Cooks and Boldy James and Diddy and West Side Gun. Like, it's a really stacked album in terms of features and collaborations. There's a fantastic song with Conway the Machine called Tyson versus Ali, which I highly, highly recommend. This album feels like a kind of brother record to Conway the Machine's God Don't Make Mistakes, which I've shouted out recently as well. These two records have kind of come out a couple of weeks apart. And of course, both of these artists are on Griselda Records. They are cousins, they're related. They come from the same sort of East Coast sound. And if you enjoy one of these records, you will enjoy the other record. They're both quite short. This is barely 40 minutes and it's really, really easy to listen to. It's also worth noting that this record, Tana Talk 4, a lot of the tracks are produced by The Alchemist, and his production is absolutely fantastic here. Some of the best beats that he's laid down in the last couple of years. I was thoroughly impressed with just how this thing sounds on songs like Super Plug and songs like Mr. Chow Hall and Tyson versus Ali, which I've already mentioned, Uncle Ben. Some really great mixtures of those great sort of cut up vocals and crate digging sample work that you've come to know Alchemist for, and of course the presence and vocal tonality of Benny himself. Really, really strong record. I really recommend it. I really recommend that. I really recommend the Conway record, and I really recommend the Fly Anakin record in terms of like recent hip hop records that people should check out and dive into. And there are a few other things I checked out that I found a little disappointing, unfortunately. I found the new Alex Cameron album, Oxy Music, to be disappointingly below par for him. And I actually went back and revisited some of his other stuff, and I feel like I'm just getting cold on him in general. I've never been a huge fan of him. I've always felt that his shtick is kind of limited, although I appreciate the subversion of what he tries to do. But this new record, Oxy Music, just feels really dry. There's a song on it called Cancel Culture, which is...
Oh, come on.
To give him credit,
I really don't want to listen to this album.
To give him credit, like, he had a song on his last album that was called like PC with Me, and it was kind of like a takedown of like both people who are complaining about like PC culture and people who are kind of rigidly adhering to like restricting yourself and your expression in the name of it. And Cancel Culture, the song, is kind of a similar thing where it's like it's bemoaning people who complain about cancel culture, and it's also like kind of deconstructing the whole idea of it. And so it's not like as eye-rolling as it might sound, but also it's just not a very effective song in terms of what it's trying to do. It kind of...
Even people who are trying to deconstruct that idea, I find that rote at this point. It's just like, yeah, I know, we all get it at this point. Can we move on, like, culturally as a people? Just move past this shit.
It's a little kind of cringe, and I hate to say that. That said, the album's title track is really good. I will shout that out. It's a great collaboration with Jason Williamson of Sleaford Mods. And the kind of combination of Alex Cameron and Sleaford Mods on this song is quite jarring at first, but it ends up being comfortably the best song on the album. So I would say check that out if you want to get a taste of the record. But yeah, the rest of it is a bit pretty boring, frankly, unfortunately. So that's a real shame. And yeah, there's other records.
Got too into character.
Yeah, there's a few other records that have come out very recently that I'm looking forward to shouting out, but I think I'll shout them out next week. And yeah, I'll just leave it there. That's been my week. Some definitely some really strong new records that I would recommend checking out. Connor, why don't you go next? What is there anything recently that you want to shout out that you've been really into?
Yeah, there's a few things. So, of course, I listened to the Jams and Tea episode of the best EPs, and so because of that. And I'm a huge proponent of the EP format, not just because it gets you more catalog ratings on Rate Your Music, but because of how quick they are. But I just love like the idea of a focused, consistent set of songs. And so I decided to go back to my favorite EP, which is kind of cheating because I can point out because it's 2 EPs, but I can point out which one I prefer, but it's from one of my all-time favorite bands known as Glassjaw.
Oh yes, love this band.
To me, one of the best examples of 2000s post-hardcore, blending the noisy feedback dissonance of the 90s with the more emo-inspired stuff of the 2000s. And so this band is kind of notorious for a few things. For one, they haven't released much material, but they never formally broke up. They released an album in 2000, 2002, and then they didn't release anything until 2010, in which they started releasing a series of singles, which were really well received. And then they put those 5 singles that they released together into an EP, released the next year, 2011, and it's called Our Color Green. And this EP is just absolutely fucking amazing. It is some of the best post-hardcore that I think you'll ever hear. It reminds me of a lot of the heaviest stuff from Deftones. If you like worship and tribute, listen to this EP because it takes their sound even further and even heavier. Like this is their heaviest, loudest release that they've ever made. This is the one
with All Good Junkies Go to Heaven. That song fucking rules. Yes.
Oh,
I'm also a big fan.
I'm so glad you know that song.
I'm a big fan of the song title, You Think You're John Fucking Lennon, which is just a great song title.
Yes, a great song title. Also one of their greatest songs that they ever wrote. Just Daryl Palumbo, the vocalist, is screaming his fucking brains out throughout this whole EP, but also coming in through with amazing hooks. And like Jake said, that song, All Good Junkies Go to Heaven, just that the drums with the just absolute crushing bass and the tap guitar line at the beginning, boom, just oh man, it just listen to this whole EP, especially you, Jay, because you love that first song, and Ryley and everyone. It's
I definitely will.
It's definitely their closest that they've ever gotten to like metalcore, because it just is so loud and heavy and still dynamic, but just some of the best drumming and bass playing that they've ever had.
Glassjaw is a band for people who think that the Deftones self-titled is very underrated.
Yeah, honestly, especially that EP. I think that's probably the best comparison. And yes, I also think that the Deftones self-titled is very underrated. Amazing album.
I agree as well.
Here's the thing. As amazing as Our Color Green is, it's not even Glassjaw's best EP that they released in 2011, because they released actually, how far are these apart? Oh, they're only a month apart. I didn't even know. Coloring Book they released just in February of the same year, and it is 6 completely different songs, and this is easily my favorite EP of all time, and it couldn't be any more different than Our Color Green. Whereas that album is it's incredibly hard hitting, noisy, crushingly heavy. Coloring Book is much more patient and atmospheric and experimental. I know this is a tired comparison, but it reminds me of like the direction that like Radiohead would take with like In Rainbows or something. Like that's how far this EP goes in turn. Like I don't even know how to describe this. I would need like a full review or like segment to like perfectly like describe how I feel about this EP, because the songs are so tightly written, but there's also just so much experimentation and different musical arrangements. But it's never not heavy. It's still very hard hitting, and at times really absolutely gorgeous. It's also heavily dub inspired, which is a thing in
Wait,
Okay.
Really?
I was gonna say.
Yeah,
I'm trying to imagine
Like-
a post-hardcore band making a dub record. Like,
Sounds pretty
thing is-
basic,
Glassjaw is
whatever
like the
the
greatest
fuck it
band I've
is.
never heard of.
well, the thing is, it sounds kind of weird when I say it, but when you listen to the EP, it makes perfect sense, mainly due to the rhythms that the drummer is playing. Oh my god, the drums on this album just so amazing, and the bass, like
you
the way they
saying
interlock.
you saying that
is-
Glassjaw have a dub EP is like someone saying that Fishman's made a death metal EP or something. Like, that's what
Look,
that
well,
sounds
Connor,
like. to
what
me.
you're saying here is
Like-
that we need to do another EP episode, which I'm sure we will do in the future, and you need to be on it where you can talk about this EP, because that sounds
I really
awesome.
need to, because yeah, every song is a 10 for me. And when I say it's like dub music, it's not like they made a straight up dub album. Like it's still very Glassjaw like, but you can hear those rhythms and you can hear the heavy effects laden stuff that dub is known for. And when I say that, it sounds kind of weird, but I feel like dub has actually always kind of been a thing with post-hardcore, especially Fugazi, who often would actually derive their rhythms from dub artists.
Yeah, actually, now
But
you
yeah.
say that, I know what you mean.
Yeah, I remember Immolation saying that like he wanted Fugazi to sound like the Stooges mixed with reggae. That makes total sense.
Holy
Yeah,
fuck.
yeah. Like Waiting Room, just Waiting Room, that
Yes.
rhythm, like that's very
I was just
I would
thinking,
say
like, when you were
reggae-like.
talking about like these two EPs, like being like together, like this, like, you know, amazing sort of like example of the format. Like I immediately thought of the 13 songs Fugazi comp
yeah.
of those early EPs, and I'm like, that to me is like, you know, one of the definitive, you know, statements in like the establishment of post-hardcore. And this is like, seems like it's kind of a similar sort of thing, except like, you know, in a way different sort of arena of that.
All these and Thrice, post-hardcore is just fucking eating those great EPs. I mean, my god.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a good genre for taking advantage of the format, it seems.
Yeah, if you put these two together, it's like a full-length album, 50 minutes. I call them the color EPs because they're both same year. They both have the word color in the title. If you put them together, it's my favorite Glassjaw album, which is saying a lot because I think Worship and Tribute is perfect. And it also contains, last thing I'll say about this, it contains what I've finally decided is my favorite Glassjaw song, which is the closing track, Daytona White. Just absolutely beautiful, haunting song with drum brushes and stuff, like, and then an amazing
Vanilla
noisy
Poltergeist
climax.
Snake is a song on here.
Yeah,
Fuck me, that's a great title.
No one gets out alive. Oh, so good. Anyway, moving on. Ryley will be happy with this next one because so I drove to Kansas City from Omaha, which is like 3 hours, so I had some time to listen to albums, and on the way to and fro I listened to 2 Big Thief albums.
Yeah.
And because I've been doing a Discog run, just kind of quickly going through all their albums, and again I haven't gotten the time quite yet to like dissect or really analyze like Adrian Lenker's songwriting, but I listened to Capacity and UFOF, and they're both great. They're both really good. And I would actually say that Capacity so far is my favorite album of theirs.
It's just
Ooh.
an amazing record. Like every time I listen to
Yeah.
that album, I fall more and more in love with it. Like, and it just has like two of the, and I'm not even exaggerating, two of the 20 best songs I've ever heard on it. Those being
Two.
Mythological Beauty and Mary.
Yes.
Mythological Beauty, I think, is the best Big Thief song, and I don't know if they'll ever be able to make a song that I love more than it. Although, fuck, I wouldn't put it past them. But also, like, it's such a fucking heartbreaking album too. Like,
yeah,
fuck, man. Like, Pretty Things is such a fucking uncomfortable opening song lyrically, and it's also so beautiful just to like listen to. And then it goes into Shark Smart. Ah, fuck, man, that just. And then like Coma and shit, like when she's singing to her mother, and it's like she's, and the implication is that her mother is like gone through some horrible sort of traumatic event, and she's kind of like dissociated, and she's kind of like trying to sing to her mother in this like through this fog that's separating her from like the real world. Fuck, it's so like Adrian is such a fucking evocative songwriter, like, and not even just like, you don't even have to be dissecting the lyrics, just the way that she puts words together, the way that she sings and shit, like, fuck me, that record.
She's quickly become a favorite songwriter of mine.
Yeah. Anyway, I totally like stepped over you here, Connor. Like, tell me, I want to hear what you think of these records.
Again, it's only been like one full listen, so I haven't had that much time with them. But there's really something about driving from Omaha to Kansas City, which is one of the most beautiful drives you will ever. That's sarcasm. It's really, really fucking boring. It's just lands of nothing. But there was something about listening to Big Thief while driving in the middle of absolutely nowhere that felt kind of fitting and comforting. Also, I gotta say, like, these albums are produced so beautifully. Like, they're arranged so nicely. The drums also, like, of course, they're not hard hitting because they're not supposed to be on a record like this, but they sound so crisp and so full. And one song that, like you said, Mythological Beauty, perfect. Mary, perfect. One song that actually, off Capacity specifically, that kind of blew me away was actually Great White Shark, which has
song.
it has this incredible chord progression that I can't even like pick up. Like, I can't wrap my head around, but the way it just ebbs and flows is just gorgeous. And then there's that one section where just this instrumental break where this just sudden rush of clean guitars comes in, and it's honestly one of the most beautiful moments of music that I've heard in a long time. Like, I was blown away by that in particular.
Micah was really effusive in his love for that song off of that album too, so that doesn't shock me.
Oh, for real?
Yeah.
Underrated aspect of Big Thief, like that's weird that it's underrated because it's so foundational, is like how actually complex and intricate their guitar parts are. Like, I think records like UFOF and Capacity allow you to appreciate this a bit more because like they're so pared back and stripped and kind of like dreamy. But like you have like, especially on Capacity, you do have like these really kind of intricate and unexpected little chord progressions. And that is all like courtesy of Adrian and Buck Meek as well, who is the band's kind of like lead guitarist. But Adrian herself is the kind of compositional powerhouse, both lyrically and musically. And she just absolutely bleeds, oozes like amazing little melodies and chord progressions. And also Great White Shark has one of my favorite lyrics of hers at the end of the song when she's like, I howled when you were born through me, and you're alive with a breath you can't see by the grace of this dream, which is like such an evocative description of like the relationship between mother and daughter, which again is like a theme that's actually on a lot of the songs in this record, like Coma, like I already mentioned, and then Mythological Beauty, which is a song about like her kind of relationship with her mother and her parents, and understanding like how hard it was for them raising kids, and also the knowledge that she has an estranged brother that she's never met, who's like, not that much younger than she is.
Too.
And it's a song about that, and that's something that she talked about on Simulation Swarm on the new album. And it's just I could go on all day. I'm gonna make a Big Thief video, like a solo Big Thief discography video at some point. And I think you're really gonna love the next two Hands and Dragon New Warm Mountain I Believe in You, because in a lot of ways they're kind of like complete opposites to Capacity and UFOF, but like also they continue those record sounds as well. Like The cool
You're
thing,
really gonna fuck with Two Hands. I can feel it.
yeah, Two Hands is like the
That's my
complete
second
opposite, the complete inverse
Ooh,
of UFO.
so
If
good.
like they're just like complete
Yeah.
opposite records.
Yeah, I'm really excited. And UFOF is a great album too. I might say at the moment, just based off first impressions, that it's my least favorite of the three. Sorry, Jake. But again, they're all great. Cattails, that song, is one of the best songs that I've heard from them.
Yeah.
The live
Beautiful.
version of that is my favorite version.
Oh shit, I gotta
Yeah,
check that out.
it's worth checking out. There's great live recordings of Big Thief. Like, there's one that I love where they play the title track off of their new album, which on their new album is this incredibly dreamy song. But then when they play it live, it becomes like a ka-chunka, like heavy riff song. And like you would think, how the fuck does this work? And yet it's like they make it work. Like they can do, and you'll see this in the next couple of records you're about to listen to, Connor, is that they can actually be really heavy as well when they want to be. And it's a really exciting, like
I like heavy.
Yeah, so you're in for a treat is all I'll say.
And then the last thing I'll say is actually just a song that I've been listening to a lot. And I know y'all like this song. The new Everything single, Teletype, which is just
so good.
I need to
such a
listen to this.
banger, such a fucking banger. It's like it's already the pop song of the year for me, unless you count like
The other great
I don't even know.
everything single that they dropped that's
Yeah.
also fantastic. I've basically converted Rhiannon to be an everything fan just because of how much we've listened to the new singles and Get to Heaven.
And
awesome.
they're just like such an easy band to get into for how like crazy they can be, like musically.
Yeah.
Teletype is like quickly becoming one of my favorite everything songs as well. Just if you know me, is like kind of a big
The
deal.
least
for me to say
surprising
that.
thing ever.
Well, yeah, it is least surprising, but also like they have like 50 songs that I would consider like 10 out of 10 tracks. So one of the things that was always said about Reanimator when it came out is that a lot of people weren't a fan of how that record was produced and how kind of like not cluttered, although some people would say that, but just kind of how like just intense and kind of messy and just sort of mastered in a really like loud and intense way that put a lot of people off.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan of it, but like it's nice to see everything as well as they did that. It's nice to see them doing what sounds like it's going to be a really sleek and slickly produced record. It's actually their first self-produced album, I think, which is really interesting.
Oh, that makes
okay.
sense.
So it's actually, I'm as much as I love Reanimator and I still think that record is super underrated, I actually like the fact that they've decided to really like strip things back and make a record that's a little bit more skeletal by the sounds of these singles. Because Reanimator is such a fucking like dense album, whereas like, you know, they purposefully left in bits of like noise and shit to just like make the songs more chaotic. Whereas this is like, it's very, very like rhythmic, like the best everything stuff is. And it just like gives you these like gorgeous little synth melodies that are like front and center and driving a lot of it. And Teletype, I think, is the best display they've done of that. And what's also exciting about it is it means that they continue their streak of being 6 for 6 on fucking god tier opening songs on their albums. Because Teletype is going to be the opener on the new record. So like they never miss with opening tracks and yeah, they've just fucking killed it. Like I've played this song like 20 times since it came out. It's so good.
Best hook of the year already. Don't talk a lot.
I'm so glad that we get like a lot of these sort of like personal favorite bands coming out with an album this year, and like the singles have just been like overwhelmingly like we have no reason to think they will do anything other than slap. Speaking of which, the new Porcupine Tree single has really grown on me. I like that song a lot.
It's a good song.
Yes,
I am.
How about that new Muse single though?
Oh,
Never mind. I don't want to.
It's a song. It's a song that exists.
It's. I mean, is it though? But like, is it real? Are we real? Are we Dancer? Are we Matt Bellamy?
Let's move swiftly along then. All right, Brett, it's your turn now. Do you want to shout out anything that you've been listening to in the last week or so that you think that people would be into?
Yes, I would love to. I've been waiting a long time for this. So I have been really digging into the discography of Xiu Xiu. I've been listening to them for weeks now. I've listened to nearly every album by them, just trying to see which is my favorite album other than A Promise. I'm really trying to test myself to see if there's really, you know, because A Promise is really like the canonical Xiu Xiu record, and I want to see if there's something else that's better than that. I've listened to Girl with a Basket of Fruit. That's a great one. But what I want to shout out is actually their third lowest rated record on Rate Your Music, which is Dear God, I Hate Myself. And I was surprised because I found myself liking this a lot. Yeah, it's 3.28 rated. The other two ones are Women as Lovers and the Nina Simone's cover record.
Both of which are great. Women as Lovers, very underrated. God, I'll wait till you're done, but I have thoughts on underrated Xiu Xiu albums as well.
Okay. All right, cool. Yeah, so I found myself really enjoying this. I kind of like the dark, like dance vibe of this. Like it's completely different from their other records where it's more like, you know, guitar based or like rock based, but this is more like art pop. It's more like, you know, glitchy. There was like an interview where Jamie Stewart did where he described that like the first Xiu Xiu song that he ever did was where he was like at a club on Christmas night and like he was just trying to like dance away like all those bad feelings, but like all those bad feelings just kept getting magnified. That's the feeling that I get from this record. It just kind of feels like I'm in a club, but like I feel so anxious and uncomfortable. I don't want to be there, but something's still keeping me there. It's a really interesting record. I honestly quite enjoyed it quite a bit. It's probably in my top 5 Xiu Xiu records right now. Yeah, so I really enjoyed that. And what was I want to hear what your underrated Xiu Xiu album is right now.
Chocolate makes you happy.
That was a really good Jamie Stewart impression, Connor. Like, wow.
I've been told I do a good Jamie Stewart.
So I went through a huge Xiu Xiu phase. Well, I've had Xiu Xiu in my life for a long time, but I went through a huge one in late 2019. I listened to all their records, and
it's called being bisexual.
Yeah, and I will say that a lot of them are underrated for starters. La Forette is great. Women as Lovers is great. Angel Guts is fantastic. So many great records that have like really undeservingly low ratings. But the one I'll shout out, it's not necessarily like one of the absolute best ones, but it is a great record, I think. And it's certainly, I would say, their most underrated, which is Always, the album they made directly after Dear God, I Hate Myself. It continues that sort of synth punk, art pop sort of style that record has. But I like the songs on Always even more. It's incredibly dark, but it's also incredibly funny. There's a song on it called I Love Abortion, which is a very song title. But there's also like genuinely like absolutely gut-wrenching songs on here like you would expect. Songs like Born to Suffer and Factory Girl, Got Old Mood In. Some really Black Drum Machine as well, which is the sequel to the song Black Keyboard off of Women as Lovers, which is probably the darkest Xiu Xiu song ever.
Oh no,
in my opinion.
Oh wow.
I don't even want to say what it's about because it's just that uncomfortable. But anyway, it's a real kind of tapestry of great Xiu Xiu songs within this sort of like poppier style. And it's one of their least listened to albums, I think, of their main records, and it just deserves a little bit more love. So I'll shout that out. And I'll also say that my favorite Xiu Xiu record, which, you know, used to be A Promise, and it just fluctuates. Most of the time, I think it's probably Fabulous Muscles, which I think is the most consistent front to back. I've come very close to making that a record club in the past, but we just haven't done it for whatever reason. But I will shout out a record that has had the biggest kind of turnaround for me in terms of going from this is pretty good to is this my favorite Xiu Xiu record? And that is Forget, their 2017 album, which I think is the best and most refined example of their kind of like synth driven sound. It has so many of their best songs on it. Get Up is like a top 3 Xiu Xiu song. The Call is amazing. Wandering is like a synth pop Depeche Mode banger. Hey Choco Banana is super underrated. The title track is fantastic. The closer is absolutely gut-wrenching. Like it's a really consistent tight 44-minute record with just 10 songs. And it's a bit of a grower. I think a lot of Xiu Xiu records are, but this record for me, I think is one of their most enduring albums and one of their most approachable, considering the fact that it does still have some real dark content on it. It's still one of their most approachable musically. So yeah, that would be the Xiu Xiu record that I shout out. Always and Forget are really records that I think everyone who likes Xiu Xiu should listen to. But you know, also their early records are great too. The Air Force is another really underrated album. They don't have a single miss in my opinion. They're just a really, really great band.
Yeah, I need to listen to Forget and Always too. That's like the only two ones that I think I haven't heard, other than like their like side projects, like the Nina Simone's cover and like the Xiu album.
Yeah.
I'm really interested about that Xiu album. It's only 2 tracks, but it's like I think it's like 40 minutes long. So I'm intrigued by that.
I don't think a whole lot of it, but you might get more out of it than me just for the novelty of it.
Okay.
But yeah, they have a lot of like side projects and like little projects that you can kind of sort of get lost in. I think one thing that I would recommend checking out, I wasn't really totally in love with it, but if you're interested in hearing Xiu Xiu do a harsh noise thing, like what Xiu kind of is, then the collab album they made with Black Leather Jesus last year, Moira, is some of the most difficult harsh noise that I've heard in a while, and some of the most evocative too. It's a difficult listen just because it is a harsh noise record, but I would say that if you're looking for Xiu Xiu doing a harsh noise collaboration, that is one I think that's a bit stronger than the Xiu collaboration. But yeah, like they're always putting out music, and they always are doing things that are worth checking out. I think it's like a kind of acoustic album that Jamie Stewart made and released under the Xiu Xiu name called Unclouded Sky is also a really underappreciated little minor project too that I would recommend as well, but has a kind of Tim Buckley vibe to parts of it that I think will really resonate with some people. But yeah, good band, a lot of music.
Yeah, really they're like already a top 10 favorite band of mine. Like I just love them. Each time I just watch a Xiu Xiu performance live, I just fall more in love with Jamie. But I'll move on to my next record that I listened to, which is by another band which is quickly becoming one of my all-time favorites, and that is Silver Jews. I listened to The Natural Bridge, the second album, I believe, by them before American Water, which is their more popular album. It has Stephen Malkmus, Bob Nastanovich from Pavement, and I honestly think I prefer this to American Water. It's really got some of David Berman's best one-liners I've ever heard. I mean, when you start a record with a line like, how does it go? I don't really want to die, but I only want to die in your eyes. Like, that's a great line to start a record with. And like, he just keeps going from there. Like these, like the laid back, like country vibe from it is like something that I didn't really like at first. When I started listening to Silver Jews, I honestly thought they were a really boring band, but getting more into them, I've kind of learned to just like really focus on David Berman as the main force behind this, because he is just really one of the best lyricists I've ever heard.
Yeah, I would agree. Again, I've also come close to recommending the Purple Mountains album, the album he made just before he tragically died. I've come close to making that a record club too, but the only reason I haven't is that I genuinely don't know if I can talk about it. I've heard that album at least like 40 times, and I cannot listen to it without crying. So, but Berman's a great lyricist. I actually need to listen to some more Silver Jews records. I'm not as well versed in them. But you mentioned that opening line on Natural Bridge, and American Water also has like one of the most iconic opening lines of all time. In 1984, I was hospitalized for approaching perfection. Which is one of my favorite opening lines to any album ever. But yeah, he's just an amazing songwriter, and I think anyone who appreciates really just great. He's also a really great poet as well. Like not all of his writing is in his songwriting too. He's just a fantastic poet. A fantastic poet in his own right. So yeah, we definitely need to talk about him in some capacity on the podcast at some point. I just need to figure out like what the best way to do that is, but yeah, he's amazing.
The other record I want to talk about is actually one I have a visual aid for. It's actually one of my favorite records ever, and that is The Lioness by Songs Ohia.
Great shout. Yeah. And I was just thinking about Jason Molina when we were talking about David Berman, because to me they're like Jason Molina, David Berman, and Bill Callahan are all like songwriters that are kind of cut from a very similar cloth and scene of like Americana, but like really kind of like drenched in like sadness and just sort of like slowcore aesthetic stuff. And Jason Molina was kind of the king of that. I actually haven't heard that record. What's it like?
So this is actually so I actually was hoping August would be on here because believe it or not, this album has instrumentation work from Aidan Moffat of Airstrap. So
Sick.
he's actually doing instrumentals on this, but this is a slowcore album through and through. The Black Crow, the opening track, is probably my favorite Songs Ohio song and probably my favorite Jason Molina song that he's put out. It's just got this really like heavy chords that he's putting on, and then like it slowly kind of builds up to this like really explosive beginning to the song, and then like from there it's just heartbreaking song after just heartbreaking song. He's probably right now my favorite lyricist that I've ever listened to. I also did listen to Magnolia Electric Company. That's his first album under his band name. And I didn't like it at first when I heard it, but then I re-listened to it a couple days ago, and I literally said, "What the fuck was I thinking? This is amazing. This is probably like, if I didn't listen to The Lioness, this is my favorite album by him." It's just like these, like David Berman, these really nice, atmospheric country vibes, and I hate saying the word vibes, country like instrumentation, and like it has that slowcore ability with it too, because like each of the songs here are like 7 minutes, 8 minutes, 9 minutes long, but you really never get bored with it. It kind of flies by.
I think it's pretty unequivocally his masterpiece. It's or at least from what I've heard as well, Lioness is a pretty big gap in my listening, so I do need to listen to that. But it is like the most animated record I've heard from him as well. Like despite the sort of slowcore country aesthetic, like it is a record that has a lot of punch to it. And I've said this before on Twitter many times, but Farewell Transmission is like one of my 5 favorite opening tracks of all time on any record. It deservingly has a 4.7 on Rate Your Music from like over 600
Hold On Magnolia
ratings.
is one of my favorite ending tracks ever.
Yeah, it's just like that. I mean, Farewell Transmission is just like one of the best songs about death ever written. Like it's just one of the best songs ever written, frankly. Like every single human being should listen to at least that song, but then because it's the opening track, you just want to listen to the rest of the album. So it's a great record. I think
I have no reason for not getting into this band, and I really just need to stop being lazy, because this sounds like such my shit.
Yeah, I mean, this album you'll absolutely fuck with this album. I think it recently got over 4.0 on Rate Your Music.
Yeah,
the album.
it's at a 4.1. And all of his albums, like there's a ton of them that are super well regarded. Like, what the fuck is wrong with me?
Didn't It Rain is I highly recommend that.
Yeah,
a lot of people hate the album The Ghost, which is a super lo-fi album, but actually that's probably my 3rd favorite record by him. I really tend to like that one. But yeah, Ryley, I highly recommend this album. It's probably I just did like a topster where it's probably my 9th favorite album ever. It's somewhere in that.
Yeah, I will definitely make a point to check it out, because Didn't It Rain has also been a record I've loved for many years as well. Like that's probably one of the saddest and most kind of like dour records I've ever heard. So yeah, he's great at maintaining that atmosphere and without losing you. And his voice is just so beautiful. I love Jason Molina's voice. It's got this kind of like brogue sort of like depth to it, but it's also like very tuneful and just super unique. It's like it's like if Neil Young could like do a baritone really well. Like
I also like the way that he pronounces certain words too. Like he has like a certain vocal inflection that he has that I've really never heard on any other singer.
Yeah, actually, no, you know what who he reminds me of just vocally is actually Jason Isbell. Weirdly enough, like his music's not like as sort of jaunty as Isbell's can be, although Isbell's can be pretty dour when it wants to be. But his vocal tonality and the kind of like country vocalization that he does is actually not a million miles away from Isbell. So yeah, that just came to me now. But Jason Molina, honestly, like probably because they're both Jasons. I'm just realizing like it just hit me. Anyway, whatever.
Honestly, that could be the case. I've never heard Jason Isbell's music, but I need to definitely get on that. But
Southeastern is going to become one of your favorite albums. I will call that right now.
Oh yeah.
All right. Well, I'm putting that on. I'm typing that in right now.
I think is that Morgan's second favorite album of all time?
Yes. On some days you would ask him, and it would be his favorite.
Yeah.
I've heard songs from that performed live, and I didn't make it out alive.
Yeah, it's
Wow.
an amazing, it's a masterpiece. Yeah, welcome to the Jams and Tea podcast, where you come away with the like 15 records that you have to listen to now.
Yeah, and I have one more album that I do want to shout out. This is actually a record that I kind of stumbled on kind of by surprise. Just Spotify recommended it to me. I like the album cover, so I was like, okay, cool, I'll check it out. You know, it's only 29 minutes long. The album is a self-titled album called Resavoir. It's spelled a little differently, Resavor. This is a new jazz lounge kind of like hip hop inspired album, and I really enjoyed it quite a bit. You know, I don't really listen to jazz that much. I'm really not that well versed on jazz. I've only listened to maybe like one or two Miles Davis, John Coltrane records. I mean, I listen to Bad Bad Not Good, but it's probably like the extent of my jazz. Oh yeah, I know, Ryley, you're about to send me a whole bunch of jazz albums right now, and I'm so ready for it. But all right, yeah. So I listened to this, and I honestly I freaking love this thing. It's just so like peaceful and like blissful. It sounds like from Bad Bad Good's album last year, there was the song I think Time Escaping, and that song was probably one of my favorite songs of the year. And it kind of has that similar vibe throughout the entire album, where it's really like picturesque. It sounds like the opening to like a movie, you know what I mean? It sounds really grand, and like there's really interesting progressions. Like there's some flavors with like sampling. It's a little bit lo-fi. It's really scenic. Like it kind of just feels like you're just walking through a park and you're just having a really great day. And then like I honestly I don't really have many words to describe it. I've only listened to it twice, but each time I kind of listen to it, I kind of pick up different stuff in it that sounds really cool to me. But yeah, I definitely want to recommend that. But that's about all the stuff I listen to.
All right, fuck yeah, nice and chunky what we've been listening to segment. Let's get into our first album review of the day, which is the new Nilüfer Yanya album, Painless. Now, Nilüfer Yanya is an artist that has only recently kind of gotten onto my radar, I'll be honest. This was a record that I saw was getting a good amount of buzz, and so I checked it out. It's her second record. She put out an album in 2019 called Miss Universe, which I think was a pretty well acclaimed and well regarded record. I mean, both of her records have gotten Best New Music for Pitchfork. So you can tell that she's kind of at the cutting edge of like alternative pop in a way that kind of has a lot of sort of cultural and mass appeal at the moment. I haven't heard Miss Universe, but from what I can gather, Painless is a slightly more kind of experimental record for her, a record that kind of ventures out into more sort of varied sounds and textures. And well, I just have to lead off with the fact that this is, even though it's like not like at the absolute top tier of my favorite records of the year, weirdly has ended up being one of the records from this year that I've listened to the most. It actually came out 2 weeks ago, and we would have reviewed it last week, but we did their EPs video instead. But I've just found this record to be really listenable. And I've also found that the experience of just having it on while I do things like drive or do chores or do errands or type or whatever has just really like allowed the songs to kind of like seep into me. And I've really developed a strong attachment to this record. It is certainly a pop record at heart. Of course, it's kind of follows in the vein of a lot of sort of indie pop with sort of rock flourishes. There's even a little bit of like flavors of just little distinct flavors of like R&B in certain songs on this record, like Shameless and the closing track. But also there's just this, she has a really like strong vocal presence for starters, a very sort of distinct sort of deep voice that is also kind of very flexible as well. And she is able to kind of find cadences that make her naturally good at filling her songs with reasonably good hooks as well. But the real thing that sold me on this record, and this won't surprise anyone, is the electronic instrumentation and the electronic sounds that are infused into a lot of these songs as well. Not all of them, but definitely a lot of my favorite songs here. One track that's quickly kind of become one of my favorite songs of the year is the opener here, The Dealer, which is just immediately sort of throws you into this eclectic mix of sounds that she's created. But yeah, so there's a lot to dig into in terms of the sounds of this record and just the overall feel of it. But I'm curious what you guys think about sort of your impressions on this record and what things about it you like, what things about it you're drawn to, if there's anything about it that you're not as hot on. Like, generally, how are you feeling on this one?
I'll go ahead and speak my piece just because I'll lay all my cards out on the table. Is that this is an episode this week I was supposed to take a sabbatical from, and at the last minute kind of didn't. So I've definitely spent the least amount of time with this album than everybody else here. But that said, I can tell that my thoughts are probably not all that divorced and that I really, really like this. I think this is gonna be a tired ass comparison, and you could probably tie it to anyone making any left of the dial rock music in the 2020s. But this reminds me of like instrumentally like a meeting point between Radiohead, like right in between In Rainbows and Hail to the Thief. Like you have that kind of garagey sensibility that Hail to the Thief had, but kind of the not necessarily like the polish, but there's just some of the instrumental tonalities, particularly the guitars, that sound right off of this thing. And a bunch of moments where I was actually reminded of like some of these cycling drum beats on like 2 songs where I was distinctly reminded of Weird Fishes, which is a great thing in my opinion, just because no songs really sound like that. And when a song does sound like that, I like it a lot. I think my favorite song on here is Pretty Head and Shoulders, the song Stabilize,
Great
which is
song.
sort of like it's like the peak here instrumentally. It's like the best this album manages to sound. It blends everything. Like there's a really organic instrumental presence here, but there's also that kind of electronic stuff that Ryley was talking about. And none of it, even on moments on the album that I like significantly less than something like Stabilize, it's never awkward or clunky. Everything here feels like it has that kind of synergy that something like In Rainbows would have. I really do like her as a vocal presence. I like her as a lyricist too. There's a lot of really, like, again, even on the lesser moments on this album, I can distinctly hear somebody who is like communicating a lot of relationship problems with kind of lyricism that I'm not used to hearing, which makes this feel particularly fresh. On stuff like The Dealer, she really kind of makes this sort of relationship that she's talking about here seem like, you know, analogous to that of something that like is distinctly unromantic, which really kind of makes the disconnect feel all the more real lyrically. If the album really has any problems for me, it's that I like the first half of this album I love. Like this was very close to being like one of my favorite albums this year. And while I don't think the second half is bad at all, it just has a little tiny bit of a lull. Kind of it starts off so strong and it doesn't quite end as strongly as it could. There's like a couple songs there with like Company, Belong With You, The Mystic, when everything is a little bit more pared back and it's really more doing that like straight up indie rock without that many instrumental flourishes. I like it a little bit less. There's a little bit less of an instrumental voice there that I really do think the album misses. I would say Belong With You is probably my least favorite song on here. But even then, it's really just lesser by merit of the fact that I think it's a little bit more dry. The first half of this album is just so colorful and so wonderful. And it makes me at least really interested in her as an artist. I kind of want to see what she did before this, and I really want to see what she does next.
Jake, you'll be relieved to hear that I, maybe not to the same extent as you, but I do kind of share your reservation. I really like the second half of this record. I particularly like the way that, because this album kind of reaches an early climax with the song Midnight Sun, which is my second favorite thing here. I absolutely
Very good song.
Love this song. And then it has this sort of a couple of more pared back, longer tracks in Trouble and Try, both of which I really like. Like, I think these songs have grown on me really hard. Like, they're gorgeous, especially Trouble, the way that it kind of like has this sort of simple construction and just sort of ebbs and builds very gently and subtly. I love that. And also like Trouble and Try coming together, like it's a moment on the record where you need a bit of a kind of take a breath, because those first 6 songs are mostly like, so like, especially with those really kind of electronic fast-paced drums on songs like Stabilize and Chase Me, like you need a bit of space. But I do think that space kind of is extended a little bit too long. And I would also cut Company and Belong With You. I think if those 2 songs were just left on the cutting room floor, you'd have a 10-track album that I would easily give like a strong 8. Like I would really be on.
I agree.
It's weird how those just that little bit of extra baggage that the record has. And I agree, they're not bad songs at all. But I do think that they give the album a slight drag at that kind of crucial point. I do really love The Mystic, though. I'll go to bat for that song. I think the record really bounces back there. That's another really strong grower. And also I think that the album finds a really nice kind of like sunny conclusion with Another Life, which is one of the more sort of R&B-esque songs on the record, where she has this kind of like little vocal intonation that I love, which is like, spend a lot of days with you. And I just love that shit that she does. And it's really sunny, and like there's a lot of darkness in this record, but it feels like it ends in a really bright place with that song. So yeah, broadly, I'm very positive on this record. It's a really easy album to play from front to back. I do have that one nitpick, but I don't want to harp on it too much because it's very, very small. I'm really, really digging this. Connor and Brett, what are you guys thinking of this thing?
I first listened to this album about probably when it came out about 2 weeks ago. Micah actually recommended it to me. So I know he's got amazing taste, so I listened to it. And I really enjoyed it on first listen. And as I kind of like listened deeper into each of the songs, I kind of noticed more stuff that I really enjoyed and kind of stuff that I really wish that Nilüfer kind of expanded upon. So, I mean, kind of obviously, I mean, The Dealer is one of my favorite songs of the year. I
just
play
those
this song
drums at
every
the
day.
very start when they come in, they're so fast and so hard, and they sound so fucking good. Like, I just immediately, I love a record that just has a sound like that immediately hooks you in the first second of it. Like I was just completely in.
Some of them are so distorted on here that they just don't even sound like drums.
Yeah, like fucking Chase Me, like the drum part on that song is like fucking harsh, and I just love it.
Yeah, it's like super lo-fi, it's crunchy. I like the drum beat. And then like once like the guitars come in, you have like a nice steady like bedrock for the song. And then the fucking bass comes in.
That's my favorite moment of the song, where the bass groove just comes in with the hook, and it's just like, I need to oh man.
Yeah, so this album starts off flawlessly. It's a fantastic song, and then like the song Left Right kind of slows things down. That's the thing I like about this album. It has different pacing. Like you have a really fast and like really infectious opener like The Dealer, and then you have stuff like, you know, Left Right and Shameless, which are kind of slower and you know, more like more R&B flavored. You know, you have like really lush guitars. You know, like pretty much every guitar in this is like just laced with chorus. It sounds beautiful. And it's also very like 80 inspired too, with some of the drums, like these kind of like spacious, like Roland-esque drums I really like too. You know, you have something like Stabilized, which is, you know, another great song. You know, you have like these like really catchy guitar riffs. You know, when I kind of heard this song, it kind of sounds like somebody like driving down like in their like parents' convertible, just like screaming these lyrics at like, just because like they're a teenager and they hate life. It just kind of gets that vibe to me. I don't know.
I love that guitar sound that I can't think of what it reminds me of. That where it's like really spacey and kind of like a bit reverbed, and it's just a particular guitar tone that feels really nostalgic to me for some reason, and feels, I don't know what it reminds me of, but I just love that little detail in that song.
Yeah, and like Midnight Sun, like, geez, this song is absolutely gorgeous. Like these like guitar melodies, it has kind of like this really nice like almost like a trip hop beat backing it, and then like these laid guitars come in. There's like little keys, like little embellishments that come in. I one thing that I really wish that I did is that I looked more into the lyrics here, because just kind of listening to some of the stuff that she talks about, I do know it's kind of about like, you know, breakups, you know, heartbreak, but just like some of just like the music just perfectly encapsulate this. It's also like I also love here at the end of the song where this like wall of like distorted guitars come in. It almost turns this song into a shoegaze song. It's such a interesting and like cool flavor that this song takes in, and this is probably like the strongest In Rainbows influence that I get from this, just because like the main guitar melody pretty much sounds like Weird Fishes, like very similar to that guitar line
with that like trip hop drum beat that you mentioned as well. Like it's just such a great like combination of sounds.
Yeah, and then like the next song Trouble, where you have like this like airy synth pad and like this pulsing drum beat. It sounds like something Fortet would make. It's like rippling, and like it's like a river, you know, like there's a flower like landing on a river. It's just like it's kind of rippling, it's a beautiful like way to like transition here. And like honestly, I agree. Like this first half of this album is very strong. Other than Chase Me, I would probably get rid of that song. If that song wasn't on here, this would be like a flawless 5-6 track run to this record. And it's a really kind of different indie rock and like kind of dream pop record that I've heard. You don't really hear many females in the dream pop or indie rock scene really get that big, other than like maybe the Wednesday album from last year. You have like obviously you have like Adrian Lanker from Big Thief, but
certainly
it's
solo
really,
artists as well.
yeah.
There's a tradition, I think. One thing I'll mention just really quickly, the biggest reference point for me, and I don't know if this is an artist any of you have listened to, but one of the most influential, I think, solo singer-songwriters / sort of electronic-esque musicians of the 2000s, which is Imogen Heap. And I was reminded a lot of her 2005 album, Speak for Yourself, which is one of my favorite pop records of the 2000s, full stop.
Good ass album.
There's a lot of like electronic instrumentation that, and just the way that she sort of infuses it into these really hooky and sort of distinct vocal melodies, and just personality that she brings as well. Nilüfer reminded me of Imogen a lot, and specifically that record too, which I think is a sort of foundational thing that you can trace back a lot of the sounds here to that sort of record.
Isn't
which itself
that
was
the album that has the fucking the Saturday Night Live sketch song?
Hide and Seek.
That's the one.
Yeah,
yeah,
that's her most famous song.
I know it.
Yeah, and of course Imogen herself like comes from a tradition of music that goes back to Björk too. So like it's a big chain of influence too. But yeah, I was reminded to a certain extent as well of Indigo D'Souza from last year, who's much more of a kind of like an indie rock artist.
I was trying to think of her name.
Yeah. So I think you're seeing a lot more of women like Nilüfer and Indigo kind of being sort of successful solo artists as opposed to kind of like leading bands, which is really, really awesome. And I think this is a great taste of sort of the best that this sort of brand of indie pop has to offer at the moment. I think I mean, even calling it indie pop feels like disingenuous. There's just so much going on here.
Yeah.
Connor, you haven't spoken yet, and I'd love to hear, I know that you think quite favorably of this record too. I'd love to hear like what your overall thoughts are on this thing.
Yeah, honestly, this is one of my favorite albums I've heard this year. There's one point of reference that I wanted to stress because it appeals to me in the same way that an artist that I really, really love and have been listening to like nonstop as of recent. And it's actually a 2000s indie band called Pinback. And they have particular records like Blue Screen Life and Summer in Abaddon, which this record reminds me heavily of because this record is produced very loudly. Like the drums are very much up front in your face, the bass, the guitar, they're very loud, but everything is so clean as well, which is a huge characteristic of Pinback. And a song like Chase Me in particular, like I listened to it, I was like, this straight up sounds like something that Pinback would write, even with like the incorporation of some tracks that have more raw sounding drums and some that are more heavily processed and more electronic flavors. It also has a very similar approachability and accessibility, as well as kind of I would almost say summery beach kind of tone to it. Tropical. Yeah. That's exactly how I feel about Pinback, which also that's a band from San Diego. Shout out, Brett. That's immediately what I thought of when I listened to this. But it is still quite different in many ways. I really, one thing that I noticed is that her vocal delivery is not very dynamic at all throughout this album. But what is dynamic is the layering of her voice and the way it's produced that I think really carries these songs. Big highlights for me, The Dealer opener, we already said, just incredible song, incredible drums, incredible hook, the bass, so good. Not an original choice, but my favorite song is easily Stabilize. Just that song, to kind of go back when we recorded the Johnny Foreigner episode earlier, that song reminds me a bit of Block Party, actually, especially in the drums. That like fast drum beat.
I really need to listen to Silent Alarm.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the guitar parts too on Stabilize during the verse, it's just like I can't even wrap my head around it because I don't even know like if it's that technical or anything, but these like staccato like they're like wrapping around like
it
your
feels
head,
like
like
it has like
it's
a
like
kind of
floating.
vague flamenco, sort of like Spanish guitar influence in the tonality of it, that
Yeah.
particular part, which is just such a cool flavor for what else is happening in the song too. It's like, dude, what the fuck?
It's so good. And of course, Midnight Sun is also a huge highlight for me. I love that distorted ending that the song has. It just like the whole song is great by itself, but with that climax, it just takes it over the top for me. But one song that like is kind of the underdog a little bit for me is Trouble. That song is just so beautiful. It seems like it's like you're at the beach at night, just staring at the sunset, just while that song is playing. It just has this like very steady, subtle rhythmic quality to it. And I like that as much as I love songs that have big climaxes like Midnight Sun, I like that this song doesn't really like ever explode. It just keeps that tone and that atmosphere throughout. Because when I first heard it, I felt like it was going to explode, but it never did. And I was like, huh, that was actually, it's a really relaxing song to me.
To piggyback off a comparison like to Radiohead that was already made, like if Midnight Sun is the weird fishes of this album, then Trouble is the House of Cards. It has that kind of sense of just languorousness, but also like, guitar noise is used in a way that's similar to like Sigur Rós almost in the end of the song to like create this sort of like gentle swell. It reminds me of that song off of Sigur Rós's second album, the first big song on that record, Svenif Englar. Like it has a sort of similar sort of hugeness to the guitar tone, but it's just done much more subtly here in this song. And I think that also to kind of piggyback off of something that Brett said about like perceiving the subject matter of this record as well. Like I don't have a clear handle on it either, but what I get from these songs, and I think it comes through especially well in that sort of centerpiece duo of Midnight Sun and Trouble, is like feelings of inadequacy in a relationship, feelings of not being able to necessarily understand where your partner is coming from, not necessarily being able to understand how they're thinking, and not necessarily being able to understand what's changed or in what way things have shifted such that they don't seem to care for you anymore in the way that they did before. I don't know if that's exactly what these songs are about, but it's the impression that I get is this kind of sense of disjointedness and disconnectedness within a relationship context. And some of the songs seem to lean into a kind of breakup space where it's like trying to pick up the pieces, and some songs seem to be like within the turmoil. And Nilüfer has a really great way of singing about these topics and these feelings and just making them feel very kind of genuine and heart-rending and kind of like pulling you in to sort of the space that she's existing within. And it's very evocative and emotionally moving. And one of the things that I think you can appreciate this record without really trying to dig into, but adds an extra layer of, I think, emotional tangibility to it all once you kind of pick up on it, that it does make it feel like a more kind of cohesive vision. And then when you arrive at the end with Another Life, you feel like there's been some kind of arc that the record has gone on, and it's beautiful. Alrighty. Well, on that note, let's do our favorite tracks and ratings then. Jake, why don't you go first?
Well, my favorite track on here is the aforementioned Stabilize. After that, I'll probably say Trouble and Shameless. Least favorite is certainly Belong With You, and I'll give the album a 7 out of 10.
Yes, so my favorite tracks are The Dealer. I'll go with Try and Midnight Sun. Least favorite is probably Belong With You, and I will give this a 7.5 out of 10.
My favorite track is Stabilize, followed by The Dealer and Trouble. My least favorite is Company, and I'm going to give this, yeah, you know what? Because I love most of the tracks, I'm going to bump this half a point to an 8.5 out of 10.
Nice. My three favorite songs are going to be The Dealer, Midnight Sun, and Shameless, which I actually forgot to mention, but Shameless has weirdly ended up being one of my most played songs here. I just love how gorgeous it is. I love how gorgeous the vocals are. I love how gorgeous the guitar sounds. I love that like electronic sort of processed guitar that gives you this weird contrast in it as well. I had the vocal refrains like Susan, like the way that she sings. I can't even do it because I can't get it breathy, but like it's just a gorgeous song about like, you know, feeling, you know, disconnected and heartbroken and just unable to truly, you know, be the and feel the way you want to feel. And I really love that song for that reason. And my least favorite is probably, I guess, Company. And I'm going to give the album a 7.5 out of 10. It's quite close to an 8. It's a very, very strong record. And I have been listening to it a lot and will continue to listen to it a lot. So that means that the album gets a 7.6 out of 10. All right, let's move on now to our second review of the day, a record that has been very anticipated, a review that I think has been long in the making, that I'm super glad Jake is able to join us for. That is, of course, the new album from Ghost, Impera. Now, I don't need to say anything here. I'm not the Ghost expert, although I have spent this week listening to the entire Ghost discography. Jake, you're here, you're queer, you love Ghost. Let's talk about this band. You made a video where you ranked all their records and listed your favorite songs. Again, link to that in the description. What do we need to know as context leading up to Impera? What were your expectations and how does the album deliver for you?
Well, Ghost came up in the early 2010s as the pet project of one Mr. Tobias Forge. But funnily enough, when that album came out, Opus Eponymous, nobody actually knew that because Ghost was a project that was drenched in secrecy. It was kind of in that part of like, it was so early on in the decade. It was sort of before information became as easily accessible as it is now, where you can just kind of like find out this shit just super easily. But all of the people in the band were cloaked in costumes and makeup, and this was just kind of released and nobody knew where it came from. And then eventually, because, you know, we live in the information age, it was leaked that it is Tobias Forge, who is a Swedish metal musician who's been part of bands like Repugnant in the past, a death metal band that he was the frontman of. And now we're sort of watching this experiment play out in real time because Opus Eponymous was super successful, and the albums that followed it were additionally as successful because they capitalized on the sort of campiness of a Black Sabbath style heavy metal and arena rock sound that sort of got a little bit more pronounced with each record that like followed. Like you have something like Infestissimum, which is a little bit more of the like 70s heavy metal psych kind of stuff, and then you have like the benchmark record, which is Meliora, which is basically what most people consider to be the kind of defining Ghost record, which is this sort of lean, all killer, no filler, just great metal song after great metal song kind of deal. And that's when that band like popped up on like the music community's radar. Anthony Fantano's review of that being, I believe he gave that like a 9 out of 10, was like a really big moment. That's like when they became not just sort of like, it wasn't just a thing in the metal community anymore. It was in like the music community. And after that, we had Prequel, which was the first album I was actually there for the like rollout of. And Prequel was definitely a lot more divisive of a record than what came before it, because it sort of capitalized on the pop elements of their sound. It blended the sort of heavy rock sound on songs like Rats or Faith, which is traditionally what you would want with that. And then it had songs like Pro Memoria or See the Light, which are, you know, some people like them, some people don't like them, and there are some people who, like me, like one and hate the other. But this is sort of all signifying in the sense that like Ghost have always been moving in a particular direction where their sound has been more accessible, more arena rock ready, and stuff like that. And Impera is very much following in that tradition. We got the single released for bewilderingly Halloween Kills. We got the single Hunter's Moon, which I'm I'm pretty sure that single is a universal hit. I've never heard a word wrong about Hunter's Moon, and if any of you have anything bad to say about it, I frankly won't hear it. It's some of the gnarliest guitar tones we've heard on a Ghost album since Meliora, and that got everybody kind of excited because we kind of figured a new album was on the way. And then Call Me Little Sunshine came out, and everyone was like, "Oh, okay." And then 20s came out, and that was the most universal thud I think a Ghost song has ever landed with. I've seen some people defend it, and frankly, as scholarly and as deep of a connection as I have with this band, I find no excuses for 20s. The song has not grown on me in the slightest. It's a terrible fucking song. But I think that kind of got people a little bit concerned for the rollout, which it did me. And then I listened to the album, which I was not anticipating, just because the reviews for this have been insanely divisive, especially with critics. Nobody fucking likes this record. On Rate Your Music, it has a bewilderingly low 3.04 score, which I
remember it being 3.05 a couple of hours ago.
Yeah, and look, I'm not saying that there isn't things to take issue with, especially with shit like 20s, but this has to be some of the most confusing reception I've seen an album be met with in a while, just because Prequel was an album that I did not love when it first came out. I was insanely underwhelmed by it, and it took me a while to get into what that album was doing, and I really do love it now. And this album, and that album was that was almost as well received as Meliora was, just by wider circles. And this album does what that album does, but better, and people like it less. And look, I'm not going to deny that it definitely has the lowest low point of any Ghost album thus far, but everything surrounding that I find to be about as consistent as anything this band has ever made. I mean, I guess the thing is that the sort of arena balladry that the sort of band didn't start with, there's no songs like He Is or Majesty or See the Light or Spillways or Darkness at the Heart of My Love on the first Ghost album. And I think that's where the divide is coming from, is that there's still the people that are holding on and wanting them to be this very traditional, classical, heavy metal, doom metal inspired band. And they've just never been that ever. Even on the first album, they covered the Beatles on the Japanese version of that. This has always been an insanely camp, silly band. And all of these songs have that kind of camp sensibility, that kind of Meatloaf sort of arena rock Jim Steinman sensibility to them. And I think they're way more effective here than they have been elsewhere. I mean, we have songs that are like the opener Kaiserion, which narrowly probably my favorite thing on here. I love the intro track instrumental is really the only instrumental I'm super fond of on here, but the sort of buildup that creates into the absolute just blood pumping fun that is Kaiserion, which I don't know what a Kaiserion is. I don't care. I'll listen to Tobias Forge sing about it all fucking day though. And you have that sort of appeal that the band has always have. And then you have songs that follow in that stead, like Hunter's Moon, like Watcher in the Sky. And I enjoy these songs about as much as I enjoy any strong material that the band has put out elsewhere. And then you have refinements of things that I think weren't really well executed on Prequel, stuff like Pro Memoria, which before 20 was easily my least favorite Ghost song, just because of how clumsy and cheesy and bad the hook was. And you sort of have them going in that kind of ABBA-ish direction on songs like Spillways. And I really enjoy songs like Spillways, or even Darkness at the Heart of My Love, which is distinctly a more He Is kind of style ballad thing that is, I guess, a little bit more of a divisive track. But I love the sparkling acoustic guitar on here. It adds a really interesting instrumental tonality to the song. And I even really love songs like Call Me Little Sunshine, which I'll admit as a strangely worded hook, but the song itself rips. It's so much fun. And that's, at the end of the day, what confuses me the most is that this is a fun, consistently energized record that, even if you fall slightly on the lesser side of the Ghost fandom, I just don't see how this is significantly worse than anything else that they've made thus far. I wouldn't say that this is, I'd say that maybe Prequel is a slightly better album just because the low point on that record is better than the low point here. And I just think the music is a little bit tighter and more interesting. And, you know, it's not as like repetitious as some of the songs on here can be, but it just confuses the hell out of me that it's like, this is the album, this one. Why?
I think I can speak to this to a certain extent because I've been thinking about this week. And first of all, I am relatively new to Ghost. So I never really got to experience their kind of like peak in popularity as it was happening. But when I listened to all of Ghost's record this week, they struck me as a fundamentally uncool band, particularly in the current era. Like, they are making music that is not very fashionable, that has a niche appeal, and that potentially will alienate audiences who are going to be into bands that they often have been brought up alongside.
True cult metal fans fucking hate this band.
Well, that's true, but they've never been for them anyway. I'm talking about like heavy metal fans who kind of like,
even then they still hate them too.
Yeah, exactly. And there's this hesitancy towards Ghost, and I think part of the reason behind that is how much Ghost embrace the cheesiness, the camp of 70s and 80s rock and metal records, specifically AOR bands. And this is the album where Ghost, and it feels inevitable listening to all their albums in order when I think about it now, that they would make a record like this, that this fully commits to AOR. And by AOR, I of course mean the adult-oriented rock of bands, of 80s bands that have not necessarily aged particularly well, bands like Journey, Foreigner, Boston, Asia.
Kansas.
Yeah, exactly. Like if it's a place in America, it's an AOR
name
band.
A state and or city.
Yeah. So those are fundamentally uncool bands. A lot of their music has not aged well. And so the prospect of Ghost fully leaning into that aspect of the music they do, and that's always been kind of an influence that's been there in some format. But Impera is a full-on AOR record. There's actually very little music here I would describe as heavy metal, frankly, or even approaching it.
It's pop metal, honestly.
Yeah, it has the like metal heft to it in parts, but to me, this has got much more in
Ghost
common.
have always been a pop band, but
I've never listened to like the genre, but I get a strong like power metal influence from this too.
Yes,
very
definitely.
And very,
they have a similar appeal to bands like Halloween, who we spoke about last year. But Halloween are a band I think that kind of take it a bit further and lean more into the heft of its sound, whereas Ghost are kind of just more fun and irreverent. And here's the thing, like, do you like Meatloaf? Because if you like Meatloaf, you will like this album. This is, and I have to give credit to our mutual friend Spencer for being the first person to actually say this.
Yes, he did.
This is a Meatloaf record. Like, this is a glammy, hard rock record that has all of the trademarks of the genre. I mean, down to Darkness at the Heart of My Love, like being so evocative of like Heaven Can Wait, and like whatever the closing track is on Bad Out of Hell. But like, as you'll know if you watched our Meatloaf episode, Bad Out of Hell is an album that I love. Like, we all on the podcast adore that. That's a foundational rock record, one of the best rock records.
Amazing album.
And it feels almost like a dirty word to consider the idea of hard rock or AOR that has these kinds of sort of progressive metal-y influences being something that has any real place in the current world. It's very unhip, it's very uncool. And like, to a certain extent, I can understand why. It's very cheesy, and that cheese is not going to appeal to everybody. But to me, what is the greatest strength and success of Impera and is the fact that it leans so far into that. To me, one of the things that held Prequel back, and I still think that's a really good record, but one of the things that held it back is like, it's almost like Ghost weren't quite ready to fully commit to what they wanted to do. Yeah. And it's like, the only thing worse than like making bad AOR is like gesturing at AOR but not fully like committing to it because you're kind of scared of like losing whatever credit you have. And it feels like to some extent that Tobias and the band have completely just said, well, fuck it, like this is the kind of band we are, let's fully lean into that. Let's completely embrace that and just make a record that's totally dedicated to that. Let's not try and make concessions to people who want us to sound a particular way. Let's just fully make that record. And for that reason, I think this is their second best album. And frankly, it's not that far behind Meliora for me, although it's a very different record that does have a slightly different appeal, even if it's recognizably the same band. I have had a great fucking time listening to this week. I've been playing a lot of Rayman Origins, which is a classic platformer game. And I've just been listening to this while playing like all the Ghost records, but like particularly this one, which is such a great soundtrack to just like.
Riley's been inadvertently living my entire senior year of high school where I just did nothing but play Rayman Legends and listen to Meliora.
Yeah.
Like that was all I did.
So that's been a really fun experience for me this year. I've just really enjoyed the camp and the cheese of it. And I'll get a little bit more into it once everyone has had a chance to speak their piece. But I loved this and I was not expecting to. So it was a really pleasant surprise for me. Brett, Connor, what about you guys? What are your kind of, because I think you're both a bit newer to Ghost than even me and J-Cast. So what was your expectations versus experience with this particular record?
I've been familiar with Ghost ever since they started pretty much, but I never like really sat down and listened to their full-length albums until this past week. So this is coming from a newcomer's perspective. And then I was tempted to do like a full Discog dive, but I didn't end up having the time. So I just chose their debut opus
Eponymous.
Empanada. No. Yeah.
Just don't try to pronounce Infestissimum. It will be here a while.
Infestissimum. There we go. You just
hey, you did it.
Hey.
Thank you. And I listened to Meliora too. Their debut, I did enjoy quite a bit because I do like that old school classic kind of hard rock heavy metal sound that they go for, and I liked like the dark satanic themes as well. I thought that was pretty. It is pretty cheesy, but it's fun, you know. Yeah, again, like I get their appeal, and I really enjoy like what they do. And Meliora, I loved because the songwriting was just pretty much top notch. So going into this one, I didn't know what I was going to think of it, especially seeing that the main genre was, like Riley's been saying, AOR, which, if I'm going to be completely honest, I'm not the biggest AOR fan.
Who the fuck is, to be fair?
I really think they fell off with Neofeeder. I'm going to shoot myself for that joke. Jesus Christ.
I don't even get
I know what it's like to actually experience that in real time.
Oh.
Also, by the way, I've actually never heard Bat Out of Hell like all the way through, so I can't really compare it in my mind to that.
You could give this album a half star, and I would still tell you to go listen to Bat Out of Hell.
Yeah, I mean, that's just like hard rock meets prog in a certain sense. Like, it's
like Bruce Springsteen.
Yeah. Anyway, you're saying.
I was listening to this actually yesterday for the first time because I wasn't even sure if I was going to be on the full episode just because of time constraints and stuff. But listening to this, and the intro, there's neat little epic intro, but then it goes into the Isarion. I was like, oh, this is a good ass tune. I love the song. Yeah, it's still my favorite. It ended up being my favorite song on the album.
I think it's mine too, actually.
Probably mine.
It's mine as well.
Just great riffs all around. Great little guitar licks, and it just goes hard. It's catchy as fuck, and I was like, yeah, okay, I'm down for this. But then Spillways comes on, and
I love ABBA.
Yeah, actually, what this reminded me of was Toto of all bands.
Yeah,
like
it's definitely a fear.
100%.
Yeah,
it sounded like that "Hold the Line" song.
Yes. Now that's
the
an AOR
possible
classic.
Comparison you could have made.
That is an AOR. That is a fucking, like, I had that song on my Nokia phone when I was like fucking 12. That shit is like, that song should only be listened to in like 96 kilobytes quality coming through a brick phone speaker. And that is the true AOR experience.
I've only ever heard
Fucking
that
great
song on like shitty little radios in like kitchens and stuff.
Exactly. You wouldn't want to hear it fucking lossless. Fucking
or like at the
fucking lossless.
like at the I like the dentist waiting room or some shit. Like that's where I imagine hearing this.
Like it sounds like shit, and I will fucking jam it like anytime.
Yeah. Like it's not a bad song, but if I'm gonna be honest, it's just not really my cup of tea.
Which means you did not really care for this, I gather.
Yeah, unfortunately, yeah. This I was not a big fan of this album overall, and again, like I said, I'm probably the least experienced with Ghost's sound overall, even though I do enjoy those earlier records. And I will say there are a couple of other songs that I like. Hunter's Moon is awesome.
Fuck yeah.
I agree. I cannot Jake said, fuck anyone
that
who
guitar tone
doesn't like that song. Yeah, it's a good one. I also really like Watcher in the Sky. I think that's a really good song.
The meatloafiest song on here, frankly. Just so good.
Oh yeah.
Well, in that case, then I might like some Meatloaf.
Yeah, I mean, it's just big, enormous guitars and vocal hooks that'll get stuck in your head forever. That's entirety of Bat Out of Hell, and that's exactly what Watcher in the Sky is.
Hell yeah. Yeah, I'm totally down for that. I will say, at that point, I was like, this is a pretty good album. And then Dominion comes on, which is just like an interlude, like a horn interlude that starts and then ends and doesn't really lead in. Like,
why do the horns why do they sound like that, capital T? Why do they sound like that?
It's such an interesting change for the album too. Like it's so like pummeling, and then like all these chugging riffs are going. Like it's so fun, and then there's like this death march right in the middle of the album. I don't get it.
Yeah, like to me, it just put everything to a grinding halt, and like I was like, okay, this is where the second half starts, and then of course, 20s.
Listen up. Again, this is very possibly the worst song hook I have ever heard in my life. I'm dead serious. It's so awful. I can't think of one that sounds like it. The raw production on the gang vocals here, like legitimately, what the fuck were they thinking? Like, why?
You motherfuckers.
Smooching at the feet of the ruler.
What's funny is one compliment I will give this song. I think I said this when we were talking about the song when I was last on, is that I think the riff is good. I think it's a good riff.
The riff's great.
Yeah,
it's just everything around it sounds like Duty S.
Yeah, it literally.
I love moolah.
I wrote in my
confused
notes
why it's like a Latin beat too. Like it's a reggaeton beat in a metal song. I don't get that.
I expected him to rap on it, and I'm a little disappointed that he didn't.
I was expecting a Bad Bunny feature. I don't know why he didn't come on.
Honestly, I wish that he'd rapped on it. Like, to be honest,
it would have. Honest to God, if anybody could make it work, I really do feel like Tobias Forge could make it. Like, it would be his Roll the Bones, and I would enjoy it in the exact same way I enjoy Roll the Bones, in that it's like it's goofy, but I can't tell you I dislike it while it's on. Also, we just don't need a Ghost song about Trump supporters. We don't. I live in the year 2022. I want this part of culture done. Please stop. I don't want it.
It's like they have, like, anytime they write, or artists like write like a big political song or something, they just have to, it's like a requirement by law that they make it sound shit compared to all their other songs. Like, why not make it your most badass instrumental yet, if you're angry.
Hot coffee pot.
And people in the Ghost fandom will tell you Prequel is an album that thematically, like, you can't really tell this unless you know stuff about the band, but like Prequel is basically Tobias Forge bitching about his former bandmates the entire time thematically. Like, Faith is just a song about how much he hates his former bandmates that tried to take credit for him and try to get paid more. And like, Tobias has been petty before, and he's made it work because Faith is one of the best Ghost songs. It's unbelievably fucking hard. and yet
Need to listen to that.
bewilderingly here, where it's just like, you had so much ammunition and you picked the worst route. Why? Why did you do this to me, Toby?
I also wrote in my notes that his delivery in the verses to me straight up sounds like Corey Feldman. Like just this weird raspy, like
It really does. It sounds like Stone Sour. It 100%. I agree. I don't hate Stone Sour for the record, but it does sound like it.
I don't. Last time I checked, I don't think Corey Feldman is the singer of Stone Sour. No,
he is.
Yeah. Oh yeah. But yeah, and the stretch of tracks of 20s, Darkness at the Heart of My Love, Driftwood. Like I understand why you dig this, but I don't know. It's just not for me. Like the cheesiness
that
level
I get
is, yeah. It's just like it gets a little bit much for me, and I feel like part of it is that like past few years I've been working at like in the summer at a kitchen, and they play the same classic rock songs that play the same shit every time. So I hear Hold the Line by Toto. I hear fucking Foreigner, Boston, like
that shit can
5 times every
fuck
day.
up. Like
I
feel
so
you.
I feel like I've been conditioned to not like this style that they've gone
That's
for.
fair.
I wish I could, you know. And again, I like some of the songs. I actually like the closer. I think the closer is really nice.
Yeah.
And
see, your opinion makes sense to me, Connor, because the 2 albums that you've from them are the ones that are the least accessible from like a pop standpoint. Like Meliora and Opus Eponymous are primarily metal records, whereas something like Prequel is like, that's an arena rock album. So your precedent for this makes sense to me, whereas people who have followed this band as closely as I have, having these divisive reactions is just like mystifying. So I completely see.
Okay, yeah, that makes more sense for my reaction. Maybe my opinion will change if I go back and listen to their other albums that I haven't heard.
You can skip Injustice-Amon. You don't need that.
I might give it a chance. We'll see.
Ghost fans are going to yell at me, but I don't care.
Completely
go listen to what was it that you thought the closer on that was called, Ryley?
Monstrous Cock. I mean, you can't tell me that
monstrance clock for those who are not in the know.
You can't tell me that monstrance is a word. Like, that's not a fuck off.
Look, there are so many sexual innuendos in Tobias Forge's songwriting. You can't tell me that that's not totally intentional. It absolutely is.
I could believe it. Like, I mean, to be honest, the more I think about it, the more
one of the things he told me he told the audience in the concert that Morgan and I went to, which is on this channel. You can find it way back in the, like, if you rifle through the folder of videos before the podcast started, is one of the things that Tobias Forge said to everybody at the end of the show was, "I want you all to go home and have an orgasm," in his very Swedish accent.
Thank you, amazing. Dr. Frankenfurter.
I mean, exactly. This Ghost is that's the band they are. Is fucking yes.
I mean,
exactly.
Rocky Horror Picture Show, a movie that also stars Meatloaf.
Yes,
it's all connected. All right, so Brett, it remains Perfect to time. You. We haven't heard what you think of this record yet, and I definitely kind of feel like I've thrown you in the deep end a little bit, inviting you on to talk about this band. But I want to hear like what your expectations were, and then what you got, and what your feelings are.
Yeah, so this is my first Ghost album. Like Connor, I've been aware of them for a while now. I used to be friends with somebody who Ghost was their favorite band. And I knew about what they were. I knew like what they were like, what they look like. They have the crazy stage makeup. Their live shows are incredible. And it wasn't really my thing. I wasn't into metal back then. I like really did not like any of like that style of metal, like 80s, like hair metal, that type of stuff. Just because mainly like that was stuff that my dad raised me on, and I just really did not like it at all. I grew out of that phase really quickly. And when I heard about the new Ghost album, I was kind of expecting it to not be good. I've never heard a Ghost album, so I really had low expectations for listening to this. But, you know, to my surprise, I freaking love this thing. It's, yeah, man.
Oh, yeah.
You should be proud. This is an awesome record, dude. I was really taken aback by like really how over the top they are, and like how kind of like, you know, campy, silly, kind of, albeit, but it's just all in good fun. You know, I really just had no problem with any of the songs here, even though it does evoke that style of metal that I'm not really a fan of. It actually made me appreciate it a little bit more, and I probably will end up being a bigger fan of that style just from listening to Ghost. And yeah, like everybody said before, like Kaiserian is just a fantastic way to open up this album. Like I'm gonna be real, like like when I first heard this sounds like the intro to the Power Rangers to me. Like it just sounds like really silly and like really just that sound, but it goes.
It's
like,
fucking
it goes
anime
so hard.
intro core. Absolutely.
Oh yeah, it's very Nintendo core, but I just found myself listening to this, like, you know, like at the gym, and then like I would just get like a rush of energy, like, yes, I can freaking complete this workout, you know what I mean? And like,
yes,
it has like this really cool uplifting feeling throughout the whole album. Like you have like Spillways, you know, like Call Me Little Sunshine. That's a song that I would love. It's just that like I kind of feel the same way with you, Jake, that like Call Me Little Sunshine is really just a goofy ass line to me. It is
a goofy ass line. I love like everything else that isn't that line.
Yes, exactly. I love the riff. I love the instrumental. I even love like the refrain where he's like you will never walk alone. Like that's like a really alone. Yeah, I love that part. So and like good. Just like almost kind of like ruins it with that line. But honestly, like from here all the way to Dominion, I just enjoy myself. Like Hunter's Moon is fantastic. Watcher in the Sky, love the chugging riff. It's headbanging. It's catchy as hell. And then like Dominion, like I mentioned before, it's a really kind of like kind of disappointing way to like put a song like that in your record when everything is just so like, you know, like full force and driving, and then you just like everything just comes to a stop, and it's just so depressing and lulling. I'm just like, what the hell is this? This doesn't even sound like a Ghost song. It sounds like it's like a dungeon synth song. It's like a Burzum song almost.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, then like 20s, you know, like I don't even want to freaking talk about that song. That's a joke. It's a joke of a song. And Darkness at the Heart of My Love. That's a great song too. I love the like descending like acoustic guitars. It's really like reverby. It's like smoky and like dark, and then like it has that same vibe of Call Me Little Sunshine, where it's like it's a slower moment. You know, it kind of feels like you're seeing them live and you just want to raise your lighter up and then just like hug your best friend and just be like, yeah, this is the best night of my life. You know what I mean? It has that feeling of it.
Right off of Queen 2, honestly. It's fucking arena rock perfection.
Comp. Early Queen.
Yeah,
I can't believe I didn't think of that.
Oh my God. I completely forgot about arena rock. Yeah, that's I completely forgot about that while listening to that. Yeah, that's a great comparison to that. Yeah, and then like Griffwood, you know, great song. I like the kind of reminds me of like a Van Halen song with like the riffs.
Yeah,
it's like a really nice like clean like clean distorted like little guitar line in there. I think it sounds great. And then the final song, Respite on the Spital Fields, I think that's how you say that.
Yes.
I think it's a great ending to the album. I'm gonna make a weird comparison here, and I'm gonna compare this to Basketball Shoes off of Ants from Up There.
Let's fucking go.
I can immediately see where you're coming from.
Yeah, it's just because like it's a lengthy song. It's like almost 7 minutes long, but it has like 3 kind of distinct parts.
Yeah.
In this one song, and I think it just really transitions beautifully. And you know, kind of like with the Nilüfer Yanya album, if you just took out like the 2 like interludes and like just take out 20s, you have honestly probably my second favorite album, favorite metal album of the year. And you know, even with those tracks, I still found myself really, really enjoying Ghost. I think this is probably a great way to kind of introduce yourself to the band too, if you haven't heard Melioria. But yeah, I don't really understand why people are hating this album. It really, when I listened to Melioria, I listened to it only once, but I did get a really strong like a really strong feeling that this was probably their best record. But like even this is up there. Like it doesn't make sense to me how people are kind of hating on this. I think it's more just so of like a bandwagoner thing. But honestly, like don't listen to what other people are saying if they really have something negative to say about it, because probably the case is they haven't really heard the whole thing. But yeah, I highly recommend this. This is definitely my top 5 metal albums of the year.
Yeah.
The baggage that people have with this band, I think, really informs their opinion. And it's like, but what confuses me is that there are people who like love Prequel and don't love this.
Okay.
And that just blows my mind. Like if I could take a minute to rant about a specific video I've seen of 2 people who I normally love, Crash Thompson and Mark from Spectrum Pulse. I love you guys. I've watched literally like hundreds of hours of your all's music content over the years, and listening to them talk about this album made me want to shoot myself in the head. Like 20s and Dominion notwithstanding, because they are notably lesser produced tracks, but the production on this album is simply not any worse than it is on any other Ghost album. And frankly, if you think this is worse produced than, say, Infestissimum, you're on like actual drugs. You are on crystal meth. You are on crack
like,
cocaine.
The production is the best, definitely the biggest gripe I have with that record. And
you can have like the songs themselves. There's some really great bangers on that album, but the way it actually sounds, no, absolutely not.
And the thing about like the production of this record is that like when I tried to listen to it, like trying to hear, what complaints people could have, even if I don't share them. It's a very loud record, I think maybe is the biggest thing. Like maybe people think that it's too like mastered too loudly, like it's very like, but also that's kind of part of the aesthetic, right? Like it's part of what makes it like work so well, is that it's so kind of in your face, like every other aspect of the record is. So yeah, I don't want to say like that some of the dislike that's been leveled at this is necessarily disingenuous, because I don't want to assume that everyone who dislikes this has negative intentions. I mean, but also like I also would be confused if people were really like super in the bag for Prequel and then completely ditched on this. Like, I'm going to say something that I think is going to, I don't even think, I know it's going to be pretty controversial. And I've kind of been bracing myself for this moment all week.
Oh no.
And I just have to get it out and say it.
Just rip off the Band-Aid.
If like the only thing, like the way you've set my expectation in my mind is that I think you're about to compare Ghost to Steely Dan.
No, this is not a comment on the band at all. But I was just looking for a moment where what I'm about to say would be maybe hopefully not too predictable. And that is that I kind of like 20s now.
You're shitting me.
Yeah, Ryley, never mind on those jazz albums. Never mind. Never mind.
Now let me explain myself.
Oh God.
Let me explain myself.
Please. I'm so ready.
I definitely don't think it's anywhere near one of the best songs in this record. Don't get me wrong. But I kind of consider it a bit of a guilty pleasure. And
I love this.
The thing is, when it was a single, we were bagging on it, like, because I checked it out. And I did like genuinely think it was like, oh, this is weird and stupid. Listening to this record and having the experience I was having and playing Rayman and just like having a great time, I just found myself being able to get on board with the extreme goofiness of this. Like, I feel that I was really primed for it by some of the lyricism and just general style of the songs that precede it. I will say there is some big production issues with this song. Absolutely. It sounds kind of just, I know the word that you want to say is bad. I don't think it's bad sounding, but I do think it's mastered in a very strange and kind of ugly way. It's very garish, and yet I find it fun. And I don't know what that says about me. I don't know. I've made the theory. I've made the therapy appointment already, right? Like, I'm gonna work this out, whatever it is. But I just think it's good. I mean, the lyrics are asinine and silly and dumb. It's very stupid. The 20s, like backing vocal parts, like make me laugh out loud. And yet, I just kind of think it's fucking cool. Like, I just have a great time. I don't. I know how I
Ryley,
sound.
I just want you to know that this 100%, this like fills me, like, this is not even like a joke. This makes me so happy because this lets me know that you like really gave this album a shot when you had like no reason to. And the fact that you've managed to like dig your heels in and come in with like this frankly bold of a take just makes me like, it settles like, I'm not gonna lie, half of the reason that I wanted to take a sabbatical this week was because I was fucking tired and I've been working hard for months, and the other half was because I thought I was going to be this album's only defender. And for a while I actually thought like I was in an insane asylum, and I was just like, what the fuck is wrong with people? Like, nobody likes this? Are you fucking kidding me? I don't want to be on the podcast where Morgan doesn't like this and August doesn't like this and Ryley doesn't like this. This is no fun. This band is fun, and that's why I love them. That's why I've always loved them, and that's why I love Impera. And I don't want that to be soured, because what's the fucking point? What is the point of me talking about this if I'm the only one waving this little flag in the air? So I appreciate the fact that you have gone this far and have like discovered something to like about this, because that truly means that you had to interrogate it. And I won't lie, I understand that take, because the silliness of the song is not as like, I still don't like it, but I think that the silliness is not like unprecedented or anything.
Not. I don't find it incongruous with the rest of the
no,
album.
it's really not.
Like I can understand. I understand. Like, and this is the thing, Jake. After what you've just said, I need to make it clear. I did not have to work to like this song. I just listened.
I love that though.
I listened to the album, and I was just like, here's the thing. It's not a standout. It's definitely like maybe in the bottom 3 of the record.
Maybe
interludes notwithstanding. But like, I was just having fun, and I just didn't stop having fun, and that's, I think, the best way to describe it. I don't think it's any goofier or sillier than like Spillways or Darkness at the Heart of Your Love.
It just has production choices that don't really make it work.
Sure.
But that said, I can still see why you can get past them. Like, I can understand that at least.
And I got to the point like listening this week where I was like actually started to even enjoy like the lyricism. Like, it's not like conventionally good, but like I love how much Tobias leans into how fucking ridiculous this all is.
You see the vision. You see, like, again, this is a band that's made Scooby-Doo chase music for a decade now, and people are suddenly deciding that this is where they draw the line.
And like sure, I get if this is an anti-Trump supporter song or whatever, like I get how that could be super annoying. But also, like, if you're gonna do a song like that, you might as well like just
make it kind of stupid.
Opposite of the worst versions of that thing, because the worst versions of that thing are super self-serious and super like, how did we get here and what have we done? Whereas this is just kind of like completely ridiculous.
Rhyming moolah with rula.
It's as ridiculous as the thing that it's lambasting, and I think in that way it finds a level on which it works for me. And also, like as has been said, great fucking riff in this song. Like, it's just genuinely like, I love that shit. So yeah, it's sitting at a comfortable 3 out of 5 rating in my track ratings. I have some issues with it. It's certainly not one of the best songs on the record, but I can't deny the affection that I have for it, and the fact that like I just, I playing Rayman and listening to this album is not only like a canonical experience of this week for me. I'm going to continue to do those two things together, I think, because it's like this
segment has gone so much better than I ever could have dreamed, because we also had Connor to speak for the fact that, no, of course this album is not going to work for everyone. And just like Ghost aren't a band for everyone. This is one of the very few irreverent bands that I wholeheartedly love and get like an emotional response from. But I can't pretend that there's somebody who's just like, if you're just like, nah, this AOR shit just ain't for me. It's like Brett, you said this was your first Ghost album, and you made the comment that's just like, if you're trying to get into Ghost, that this is a really great album to start off with. And absolutely, yeah, honestly, like from my perspective, this is capitalizing on what this band has always been like. And really, it's not like, if I had to put it in my ranking, they don't have very many albums, but I would say this is certainly like saying it's the second to least, like it's like Infestissimum is the bottom, and then like a significant amount of space, and then I would say Impera. Even if it's not the best album in this discography, the level of quality between this and Prequel and the debut is not that much, because I would give them all an 8 out of 10. But that's the thing, is that it's just, this is what this band have always been, and it's the most ridiculous form of it. And if you enjoy this, you're going to enjoy the rest of their albums. Simple as that.
Yeah, and like I want to as well like echo how good like some of the like earlier songs on this record are as well. Like Kaiserion, we have sung to high heaven. I really love Spillway. It's like this so good. It's so joyful. Like the way he sings that, like the hook and the chorus, and it's just the Spillway. I fucking like just pump. It's just so good. I even really have come to,
are just still good.
I've come to really love Cool Moon Sunshine as well. Like
me too. I love that song wholeheartedly.
For that, Hunter's Moon, Watcher in the Sky, echo everything that's already been said about that. Darkness at the Heart of My Love. Like the more I've it's really clicked with me, like how meatloafy this is, the more I've come to love that song. Griffwood's great. Bite of Passage is like the interludes here are definitely inessential, although I like the opening one at the start of the record.
But
I'm glad that Bite of Passage exists purely for the fact that Ghosts now have a song called Bite of Passage. Which is just a fucking amazing song name. I wish they had used it for like a proper track, because it's just such a fucking Ghost song title name. I love it. I just had a fucking fantastic time with this album this week, man. I'm just
Spillways is totally one of those songs that, like, again, Tobias Forge has cited ABBA as an influence, and that is like the most ABBA song that they've ever made.
I broadly love ABBA. A good chunk of their songs anyway. Like, I'll say it again. I'll echo it again. This is probably not even probably. This is definitely my second favorite Ghost record behind Meliora. Third would be Opus Eponymous, quite close behind this, then Prequel, and then Infestissimum. But I mean, like, you have the sort of like,
they're not that far apart in terms of quality. No. Is that like this Opus Eponymous and Prequel are all comparative levels of good.
Yeah, I mean, I have like 3 of those 5 records. Is it 5 they've put out? Yeah. Then 3 of those are all like the same rating for me. So it's like, Prequel has the same rating as this. It's just that like I like this one more, and I think it's more consistent for me. But I do think that if you meld some of the like lesser sensibilities of Prequel and this and turn them into something more substantial, that whatever Ghost crank out next, I want something that has like the instrumentals on here are a little bit less essential. We already talked about that. But one thing I think about Prequel that's an undeniable standout is that the instrumentals on that album are fantastic. You have something like Miasma, which has this super memorable saxophone one
solo.
Of my favorite Ghost songs, Miasma. I love that track.
I want them to keep going in this big AOR stadium rock direction, and I want them to get ambitious with everything. I want the instrumentals to be as big as Miasma. I want everything. Like, there's still uncharted territory that this band can keep going in. And it's going to make them fundamentally less uncool. They're a band about a fucking satanic priest who sings about like being gay and shit. Are you fucking kidding me? I don't want them to be serious. There's no room in my life for more serious metal music. Like, fucking go listen to something else. That's my fucking advice. Like,
I mean, like, Tobias Forge is credited in various releases as either Papa Emeritus 1, 2, 3, or Cardinal Copia. I mean, that's all that you need to know about.
The Ghost fandom talks about which incarnation of Cardinal Copia is the like best more than they talk about the music. Which I am not quite that far into the Ghost fandom. Definitely here for the music, but that endlessly makes me laugh.
I'm curious, like, we've talked about critical reception and just general, like, what is the Ghost fandom take on this album? Is it divisive, or does everyone really just like not like it?
Every Ghost mutual I have, which I have a fair bit, across all countries, walks of life, ages, they love it.
Oh, well, there we go.
Like,
I would assume, yeah.
It's like a lot of people who are here, and it's people who appreciate it for, the camp sensibilities too. It's like they all know what they're here for, and that I'm glad for, at least, because it's like I don't want this to go down as like a failure for the band, because I mean it's just not. It's simply not. I don't care what other critics have to say.
Fuck yeah, 100%. Like, it's triumph. I love this album unabashedly.
Fuck yeah, we did it.
Alrighty.
We did it.
Let's move into our favorite tracks and ratings then. So let's do a bit of a reversal this time. Brett, why don't you go first?
All right. So favorites. I'll go with Kaiserian. I'll go with Spillways and Watcher in the Sky. Least favorite song. Do I even have to say? And I'll give this a 8.5 out of 10.
Ooh,
hell yeah.
Nice. That is very, very juicy. I have got Connor's data here. His favorite tracks are Kaiserion, Hunter's Moon, Watcher in the Sky. His least favorite is, in his words, You Already Know, which I'm pretty sure that's an Arcade Fire song, actually.
No, not Arcade Fire.
And he has rated the album a 5 out of 10. My 3 favorite tracks are Kaiserion, obviously, number 1. Second is probably Spillways, and third is probably Watcher in the Sky. Least favorite is, if we're discounting the interludes, which I think is just more interesting, I still really like this song, but I'd probably just say Griftwood. I think I just need to listen to it a bit more. But I do really like that track too. There's nothing on here I don't like. Funny enough. And yeah, I'm going to give this album a 7.5, and it's very close to an 8. In fact, both albums we're reviewing this week are kind of in that space at the moment. Yeah. It's a great record. I am going to be listening to it more and more and more. And I think the biggest compliment I can pay any record on this podcast is knowing that I will continue listening to it after we review it, considering that I usually spend the week listening to these records a few times. So yeah, it's really good, and you should all listen to it if you haven't. Jake.
Yeah, Ghosts are just they're my go-to carefree band when you want something big and heavy and have a lot of presence and personality, but you don't need to like overly intellectualize them. They're just not that kind of band. And
as someone who's new to them, I could definitely see that being that way for me too.
Yeah, absolutely. I hope you enjoy the rest of them, because I really do think that like Meliora is like head and shoulders their best for me, just because of the raw consistency and how great every song is. But it's a great place to start. You're absolutely right.
And I'll also just chuck in Morgan's info as well, because he was very close to being here this week. Yes. I can extrapolate from his ratings what his 3 favorite tracks are, and those are Kaiserion, Hunter's Moon, and Watcher in the Sky. His least favorite is, of course, 20s, and Morgan has given it a 5 as well.
Yes.
So now it's your turn, Jake.
Mine. Then we'll go to, I have my favorite is definitely probably Kaiserion. And while I would say Hunter's Moon makes my top 3, I'm going to shout out 2 other songs that don't necessarily get as much love. I'll say I really do love Call Me Little Sunshine at this point, just because everything about that song that again, that isn't the title, is just some of the best shit this band has ever made. So I don't really give a shit about the title being silly, because who cares? And then the other one is Darkness at the Heart of My Love. I love the tonality of that acoustic guitar on that thing. It's one of the best sounding songs on this album. And least favorite is definitely 20s, but I almost feel like if I listen to it again, I'll try to do it with the renewed appreciation that maybe Ryley has shown for it.
Hey, look, no matter how you feel about the song, as long as you own that opinion, then it doesn't matter.
I'll give it a shot. I'll report back next week. We'll see how it is. But my rating is an 8 out of 10. Not the band's best album or anything, but if you've been putting it off because of the reception, don't.
Yeah, exactly. Simply. And that means that Ghosts Impera gets from us plus Connor and Morgan an average rating of 6.8. All right, well, that's all we have for today. Let us know what you think of either of these records in the comments below. Did you enjoy them? Did you feel differently to us in any way on either the Nilüfer Yanya record or the Ghost record? We do want to hear from you, regardless of what your takes are, in the comments below. If you enjoyed this episode, if you're listening on Spotify or Apple, please consider giving us a 5-star rate and review on whichever service you're using. And if you really enjoy what we do, then please consider heading over to the YouTube channel. And if you're on the YouTube channel, please consider giving the video a like and subscribing if you have not already. Both of those things plus commenting help us so much more than we can convey. So if you enjoy what we do, then please consider doing those things. If you really want to support us and become our besties, then you can join the channel and support us by donating just $1 a month, and you get your name featured in the title call of every video on this channel. You get priority comment response, and if you want to give us a record to recommend, then your recommendation will go to the top of the pile. So that's there. if you want it. Please stick around for in 2 days' time when we drop our Record Club episode on Johnny Foreigner's Waited Up Till It Was Light, a fantastic sort of emo indie rock record that you have to hear if you have not already. It's an absolutely fantastic video that we've already recorded that I'm very proud of. And we have more stuff coming from you in the pipeline too, so please stick around and make sure that you, if you are subscribed, make sure that you have notifications turned on as well so that you don't miss our videos when they drop. Before we go, we want to thank Brett and Connor for joining us again on the podcast for this video and for the Record Club episode as well. If you like these guys, you should check out their Twitter pages, which are going to be linked in the bio as well. Give them a follow, and they will be, of course, inevitably back in the future very soon to talk about more music with us. As always, though, folks, rock over London, rock on Chicago, Goldfish, the snack that smiles back.